Good afternoon, everyone. It is 12 p.m., Thursday, January 12th, 2023, and I'm calling to order the virtual meeting of the Los Angeles Probation Oversight Commission. I am Frankie Carrillo, Chair of the Commission. As we begin the new year, I want to wish everyone a happy 2023 and share a few updates from the POC. Next week, we will begin the interview phase of selecting 2 new at-large commissioners. I want to thank all the excellent candidates who applied. I can assure you it will be a difficult decision. The leadership team and staff have reviewed the applications, and we will begin the interview next week. Once these candidates are interviewed, we will bring the top candidates back to the full POC for a vote to recommend to the Board of Supervisors for appointment. We will be holding elections for the POC leadership at the January 26th meeting. So commissioners, if you would like to add any nominees, please let us know today during the meeting. I'm happy to introduce Senior Deputy County Counsel, Steve Edwards, who is our new representative for County Counsel. Although Danielle Vappy will still be joining us regularly as well. And I would like to thank Alex Zitterwig for her support over our first 2 years. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you.
I want to announce also that we were able to convince Commissioner Nong to delay her retirement from the POC until January 31st. Thank you, Commissioner. So she will be with us for this meeting and the next. Finally, I'd like to let you know that Chief Gonzalez and Deputy Chief Fletcher are not with us today, as they are both attending academy graduations for the new class of recruits. Deputy Chief Patino is with us as the representative for probation, obviously, and to talk about specific issues. Thank you all for joining us. Now, Wendy Julian, our Executive Director, will explain how you can participate during this meeting, and then she will call the roll. Wendy?
Thanks, Chair Carrillo. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. We encourage public participation in our meetings and welcome your comments live today or in writing. There's going to be an opportunity for public comment on each item on the agenda, and then again at the end of the meeting for public comment on items not on the agenda. What we'll do is go through each agenda item. Chair Carrillo will introduce it. There'll be a presentation, if any. Then we'll take public comment, and then we'll come back for the commission to discuss the item and take any action if necessary. If you're pre-registered, and we have a couple people pre-registered today to speak, we'll call on you first. If you want to speak but didn't pre-register, just use the cute little raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen. Click on it and it will raise your hand and we'll see your name in the queue. Also, you can click on the 3 little dots if you don't see the hand, and that will open the raise your hand function. If you're on the call, if you're calling in, you can also give public comment. You just dial *3 and that raises your hand next to your phone number. You just have to dial *6 to accept the unmute request when you get it. And we will help you make sure you can be heard so you can begin speaking. Everybody's going to have 2 minutes today for their public comment unless the chair determines otherwise based on the number of commenters. If you'd like to make your comment in writing, and you're welcome to do public comments in person and or in writing, please send us an email to info@poc.lacounty.gov, and Janae will put that in the chat. Please do not send any public comments or any comments in the chat. That doesn't comply with the Brown Act. Only Janae and Ismail get to see them, not the commissioners, not me, and also won't be part of the public record. If you have any technical questions, feel free to send them an email or a note in the chat, and they'll be able to help you use the raise your hand function or put you in the queue or whatever you need. We will be broadcasting our meeting live today on Facebook. Everyone can watch the meeting on Facebook live now or later, but there's no engagement with users on Facebook. You can also follow our social media accounts on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at LA County POC. You can get more information about our meetings and the work we're doing, and please invite others to attend. You also on YouTube can subscribe to our channel to watch recaps and full recordings of our meetings. Una cordial bienvenida y feliz año nuevo a todos los miembros de la comunidad que prefieren hacer sus comentarios públicos en español. Les daremos 4 minutos. Solamente tiene que usar la manita, presionar el botón de la manita y le llamamos. Podemos proveer traducción al inglés si prefiere, o usted puede proveer su propio traductor. Al iniciar su comentario, nomás avísenos que prefiere hacer su comentario en español. And with that, I'm going to call the roll. Commissioner Canales just told me, Chair Carrillo, that she'll be joining in about 10 minutes. So we'll let you know when she joins and put that in the minutes. Commissioner Garcia-Leyes?
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Here.
Commissioner Kakani,
Here.
Commissioner Lewis,
Here.
Commissioner Meredith,
Here.
thank you, and Commissioner Nong,
Good afternoon. Here.
and Chair Carrillo.
I'm here.
Back to you.
Thank you, Wendy. Now we will proceed with the agenda for today. Item number 2 is the approval of December 8th minute meetings. Do we have any written public comments or live public comments, Wendy, for this item?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the December 8th meeting minutes?
I make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meredith and seconded by Commissioner
Garcia
Lays. Thank you both. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay, hearing none. Commissioners, please unmute yourselves and vote with a voice vote. Aye.
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 Sounds like motion carries. Thank you so much. Moving on to item number 3, we will discuss and take appropriate action on the Los Angeles County Probation Oversight Commission and Los Angeles County Probation Department on plans to conform with the December 20th, 2022, requiring the phase out of OC spray in units housing youth with developmental disability, girls, and gender expansive youth at Central Juvenile Hall. Wendy, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Carrillo. I'm going to give a fairly brief report on this, although I will say I have been working on this issue every day since December 8th, our last meeting. I'm very fortunate to be working in close collaboration with the Office of the Inspector General, as well as with probation, to really finally get to a place where we are moving toward phase out in a couple of units in Central. So you all may recall that at the December 8th Probation Oversight Commission meeting, Dr. Gongora gave a report, an updated report on her previous report about the statistics. There was also a motion that was tabled, which has now, I think, become obsolete since the board decided to take that motion up themselves at the December 20th meeting. So supervisorial districts 1 and 4 put forth a motion that was unanimously approved by the board to phase out OC spray, in particular in a couple of units at Central Juvenile Hall that house young men and young boys with developmental disabilities and girls and gender expansive youth. We have had a number of meetings with probation, both with Adam, but also with Ms. Falcon, who's over the training bureau, and Mr. Dominguez, and a lot of folks have been extremely helpful in helping understand both what training is currently happening, what training will be happening as the alternative to OC spray, and to promote the de-escalation efforts. There is attached to the agenda both the report back from the POC and from the OIG that was submitted yesterday, which explains those efforts and the plans to achieve full phase out in these units by February 27th. This is a long time coming, and it's something I'm really proud of the Probation Oversight Commission for continuing to serve in their duty as the arm of the board to ensure the enforcement of the board's motions, both this recent motion on December 20th, but also the motion from now almost 3 years ago that calls for the full phase out of OC spray. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions, but I'm really excited about the progress here, and I will ask Mr. Dominguez or Chief Patino if you all have anything you'd like to add before we go on to public comment.
I will certainly, good morning, everyone, by the way. Or afternoon rather. I will see to Mr. Dominguez here. You know, he certainly has a lot of experience in this area, having put together a large portion of the plan originally, you know, back in 2019. But a couple of things that I can say about, there's obviously a huge training emphasis in the motion. That's been a lot of the focus of our discussion as we prepare for this quick turnaround. There's a couple, I think, clarifying things that are important here. One is, you know, the OC phase out training that we had established starting back in 2019 has not really stopped. What it did is it sort of transformed into some of the training that we've been doing around the DOJ. So huge parts of the DOJ provisions get into training. specifically. A lot of the same areas, almost all, in fact, of the curriculum areas that are identified in the settlement agreement go back to what our focus was in the OC phase-out plan originally. So things like trauma-informed care, huge emphasis on de-escalation, vicarious trauma for our staff and others who work with our young people, adolescent development, focused on some of those key areas, along with some defensive tactics and policy updates and things like that. So that training did continue even through COVID. We had to take a couple of breaks because of outbreaks and safety reasons and things like that. But that training has been ongoing, and that's part of the reporting that we've been doing both to the POC and to the board about how many staff have been trained on an ongoing basis. The other point of clarification, I think, is around the training with the regional center. I'm still learning moment by moment here about what that training was and how that was in fact implemented. What we know is that there's been a lot of training kind of in concert with regional center, not necessarily provided by regional center, but they've certainly been assisting us in putting together some protocols around identification of young people, assessment, things like that. What we have identified is a need to really enhance our training around kind of support and supervision for the young people who are in our care. So in other words, giving some additional tools to our folks who are working directly with our youth with developmental disabilities. So that's kind of that's going to be the ongoing focus of the training that we're seeking now. We've been in contact with LACO, trying to get some of their expertise. Obviously, they're providing services to youth with special needs and things like that. So really kind of shifting the focus of that training to be a little bit more hands-on and get our folks what they need to be more supportive to those young people. I'll stop there. Mr. Dominguez is here as well. I don't know, I'm sure there's things I've left out and other things that you want to update us on.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you, Wendy. I really don't have anything to add. I just want to go ahead and, as being one of the principal authors of the original plan, I do believe that that plan is still viable, and I'm here to support operations and moving forward with that plan and implementing it. I'm sure it could be a success if we work as a team. That's all I have right now.
Chair Carrillo, if you don't mind, I'll just add one thing, which is to actually address something that you said at the December 8th meeting in your expressed questions about the motion regarding eliminating OC spray in these particular units, which is that we wanted to make sure that the focus was on full phase out of OC spray. And I just wanted to say that if anyone has any question about whether that is the board's intent, they should listen to the recording of the board meeting from December 20th. It is quite clearly the intent that we move forward with full phase out. In fact, there was a significant amount of frustration with the delays in doing so. And I think the chief responded graciously in many ways in terms of accepting that it's taken too long. So we are definitely continuing to work on full phase out just with this interim step to show that it can work.
Thank you, Wendy, for reminding us of that. And if we have any written or live public comments for this item, Wendy?
Please raise your hand by clicking the raise hand function or dialing *3 on your phone. I don't see any hands raised. Janae, we don't have any pre-registered comments on this item, right? Just on the next one.
That is correct. And we do have someone in the chat if you can
Great.
raise your hand.
Yes. Okay. So I see Luis Rodriguez. Luis, we're going to unmute you. And we'll put the timer up. Okay, looks like you're good to go. Luis, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can begin.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon and Happy New Year. I just wanted to briefly mention to the commissioners, Adam talked about working with the regional center. Just so everybody knows, aside from our line attorneys who handle the trial matters, we do have our attorneys who are, we refer to as resource attorneys. Now, these attorneys are education advocates, so they work with the school districts and securing IEPs as well as with LACO And just as importantly, what was just mentioned today, we also advocate with regional center. So if probation is intending on going into this arena, I would ask that they reach out to us so we can work together and there's no duplicative efforts as we equally watch out for our youth. That's it. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of what we've been doing for years now. Thank you.
Thanks, Luis. I don't remember if he said that, but that's Luis Rodriguez, Bureau Chief of Juvenile for the Public Defender's Office. We have like superstar public commenters today. Next up is Jose Osuna, one of the drafters of the PRIT. Jose, you can begin.
Hi, just want to say thank you for the time, express my gratitude to this commission for continuing to push this issue forward. And I just want to encourage you all to hold probation's feet to the fire on this issue. Obviously, having been part of the PRIT and having been part of the team that came up with the original plan to eliminate OC pepper spray in its entirety, it's frustrating that we continue to struggle with this issue as a county. It's frustrating to hear that probation is now piecemealing this in many ways instead of just moving forward in a progressive manner and eliminating pepper spray for all the youth that are under its supervision. I want to remind the probation department in particular that a lot of these folks are children. They're all minors in their care. And having been somebody that actually has experienced being pepper sprayed during my period of incarceration as an adult, I can only imagine what it would feel like for a child to experience being pepper sprayed. It's an excruciating experience. It's traumatizing, and I hope that when children are pepper sprayed by the probation department, there's some type of aftercare. That's something that we haven't discussed, that hasn't been talked about. The trauma that a child goes through after being pepper sprayed. I hope that we're taking care of these kids afterwards and dealing with that trauma and being able to move forward in a positive way. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. And that's the end of public comment, Chair Carrillo.
Thank you, callers. Thank you, Wendy. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments? If you do, please raise your hands. I'm going to go off the top of the list here. I see Vice Chair Jackson, you're up.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Carrillo. I'd like to start by saying that I'm glad we're here. You know, I think that we're going to have really favorable results as long as we stay on top of this. It definitely sounds like the premise of the plan is like clear policy, effective and complete training, more evaluation. But as I was reading it, understanding that our primary concern is youth safety, I'm wondering if there is any real consideration about staff well-being, understanding that the factors that contribute to the higher deployment rates of OC spray. I know that it's not as much of a priority, but Chief Deputy Bettino, if you could speak to the progress on the wellness program that you guys are devising for staff, that would be great.
So there's a couple of things that are underway. You know, we have expanded peer support, for example, for our staff specifically. There's a couple of other more direct things that we're looking into. You know, some other services that are there. So we had UCLA providing some of the you know, some of the specific vicarious trauma training, but we really have focused more effort on our peer supporters themselves. So the peer supporters get, there's onboard training that happens, and then there's annual trainings that we're providing to those folks so that they can be deployed whenever called upon. We also have probation support services in place. That's a direct contract with the psychology group who provides direct services anonymously. So if any of our folks and any of our family members, frankly, so if I, for example, wanted to go and get some marital counseling, my wife and I could go and do that anonymously, free of charge. It's all part of the contract. So there's those services are available to folks. We're making sure that we do regular communication with our staff to let them know that all of that is available. And then the third component of that is something that is in the works now, where it's a tool that will, and I don't want to say too much about it as we're kind of venturing into the contracting process, but it's a tool that will give very specific kind of direction to folks if there's like a specific mental health concern that arises with one of our young people or with one of our staff. For example, if they see that one of our young people is struggling with anxiety, or they themselves are struggling with anxiety, they can go and use this tool to learn more. And there's actually a connection all the way to in-network providers for them if they want to go and choose to get some counseling services for themselves. So that's really exciting. That will be coming in the next couple of months. And then we also have our county services, right, through EAP. So there's some services in place there as well. I hope I answered your question. There's quite a lot that we're doing. We're kind of doing some tiered approach to it. But if folks really need resources, we do have some things that are available to them anonymously, confidentially, all of that.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Because I think wellness is very different from training. And as long as we're focusing on protecting the youth, which is very, very important to all of us, we want to make sure that staff feel supported so that we don't exacerbate call outs and, things like that. How are the staff so far responding to the latest development of the phase out?
Well, I'll kick that one over to Ms. Van Kirk, in fact, because I know some conversation occurred just last week, right?
Hi, good afternoon, commissioners. Chief Fletcher and I met with the supervisors and the managers on January 3rd in person at Central Juvenile Hall to discuss the board motion and to, receive some feedback regarding what the staff might think, what their concerns are, what trainings they might need, and also to start looking at how we're going to roll this out. Of course, amongst the identified units, however, we are aware that this is going to be across both facilities. So they are aware of that as well. But to start with the identified facilities, we got some feedback. We are surveying staff now. We sent them back to survey the staff to see if we could get volunteers who would want to work in these units initially, and to see what that would look like. And believe it or not, we have gotten a pretty reasonable response. But again, it comes with, offering the proper training and additional training, and they have made some requests regarding training. So we did meet with them in person.
Thank you for that. I'll leave it to other commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Meredith, you're up.
Okay, if we're going the fact this started back in 2019, I'm just kind of curious because we got to be worried about obviously staff safety, facility safety, and youth safety. We talk about youth with people we have now in custody range from 14 up to 25. So it's going to have to use the term youth. My concern is, in addition to de-escalation, what other options have we provided to staff when they have a confrontation like this and to avoid pepper spray? Now, I never used pepper spray in my entire career, but I used other alternatives. However, having said that, have we looked at what other agencies have done once they phased it out and how they have consequences? Because that's the one thing I keep hearing from staff is there's no consequences for the youth acting out. In fact, there's one youth apparently that is creating an ongoing problem up at Barry J. And there seems to be no consequences. Like that's kind of maybe a combination of things we got to look at. But what have the other agencies done? That's my question, actually.
So I can speak to part of that, Don. Sorry, Commissioner Meredith. I can speak to part of that. We have absolutely enhanced some of the defensive tactics training. So there's a lot more self-defense that's infused in there for folks, so that they're, and a lot of it too is about positioning and how they sort of approach incidents and things like that. So that has been effective thus far. We've kind of I think some commissioners, in fact, came to see, I believe OIG came to see some of that as well. That's rolling out now, and that's been really positively received. The tools question is difficult because there's nothing in terms of like hard tools that we that we will have at our disposal, to your point. So trying to really, really focus on de-escalation, really focus on self-defense when it's needed. And then also through our policies, I think one of the concerns that we're trying to address is, I think in our old policies, there was this tendency to have folks write to a box or a category rather than responding, reacting safely, and then writing what happened. So there's been a focus on eliminating some of those categories to just focus on the things that you've been trained on, focus on doing that safely, and then writing what happened. We learned, in the last year or so that folks had not been regularly trained on report writing, which is concerning. And so we've infused that back into the training so that folks are being able to more clearly articulate exactly kind of what happened and why. So if it's not one of the things that's on the prohibited list, why did you do what you did? And why was that the safest option? So we think that that's been helpful in giving folks a little bit more liberty to just really articulate why they did what they did and what happened in the incident. And there was another part of your question that I don't think that I addressed. Maybe a part two.
And that was what, have we looked at what other agencies have done in the, once they got rid of pepper spray? And actually, Mr. Osuna brought up a good point there about the fact about aftercare when we do deploy it. While it in itself is just simply an irritating agent, there is some trauma that would go with it. So that was a good point.
So I'll certainly stand aside for Mr. Dominguez, Ms. Van Kirk, but I know that, we did do a lot of investigating of other agencies who had phased out OC. When we talk about some of the things that are part of our plan around training, around additional staff, around clinicians, one of the other things that came from there are de-escalation teams. So probation and clinical staff going together to respond to incidents, as opposed to, when it's clear. I'll back up a second. Part of our struggle is sometimes we don't share language around crisis. So what we've, as probation, view as mental health crisis, mental health may view as behavioral crisis. And so approaching those situations together in tandem, shoulder to shoulder, understanding whose role is what, and then being able to identify, okay, this kid truly is having a mental health crisis. We're going to respond in a different manner than something else. And so trying to build those teams, that's been lifted more recently to put that in place. So you have folks that are responding with specific de-escalation tactics when available. Staffing's been a challenge, obviously, as everybody knows, but those teams are coming along now to be responding to some of these more serious incidents. And Ms. Van Kirk, Mr. Dominguez, I don't know if there's other things that you want to raise here.
So I could go ahead and say this is old information back when we were initially developing the original plan in 2019. We surveyed several jurisdictions here within the state, and then some in the East Coast and Midwest. Within the state, if I recall correctly, no one was really using pepper spray. There was Santa Clara who was considering using it for a time. There were some discussions with their labor. I believe they're going to go ahead and do an implementation training model, and it never went through. I believe San Diego did something similar, but it wasn't really used here, so it was never there wasn't a need to phase anything out. In the East Coast, there was an elimination of OC spray, and I believe it was New York, if I recall correctly, at the time. They saw a significant increase in assaults, both youth on youth violence and youth on staff when they initially implemented. They provided additional de-escalation trainings. They provided care teams as well, combined with mental health facility staff, and they were response teams. Our plan basically outlines something similar. We call them resource teams. The resource teams, when we initially were implementing the plan, and this was back in 2019, we actually received training through mental health. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the MET teams that LAPD does, where they have a mental health therapist or clinician that responds with the team. So we received training coordinated by mental health through them. And that was going to be our resource team. Unfortunately, there's some changes throughout those years, administration, and there was a different philosophy that was brought in at the time. So that fell through. Now I'll just be honest, we're back, we're at square one. And some of the challenges that we experienced back then are different now today. And the main one is the staffing crisis that we're exhibiting right now. When the significant number of your staff in our facilities right now are deployed staff, it's going to be a challenge. It's not going to be easy. I was just looking at our numbers this morning, and I'm no longer overseeing operations, but I asked for the numbers. And when you only have 75 full duty staff in a facility to cover 7 days a week, those 75 staff is what you need just on any regular shift, just to run a facility. Now imagine trying to cover that 7 days a week. How do you go ahead and replace those staff with the appropriate training to ensure that we effectively and efficiently phase out OC? It will be a challenge. There's no other way to say it. We can't depend on our deployed staff 100% of the time. They have other responsibilities, other duties in the field as well. They also have different type of training in the field. We have to offer different type of training here within operations and the institutions. But de-escalation training, to answer your question, Commissioner Meredith, de-escalation training, care teams, resource teams, additional defensive tactics training. Some of the weapons that were being found or some of the assaults, our staff probably weren't receiving the appropriate use of force training. We have enhanced our defensive tactics training so our staff could protect themselves a little bit more. You can't de-escalate every situation. It's a challenge. If two youth are fighting and they're just going to challenge each other, oftentimes they're not going to listen to verbal commands. You're going to have to intervene physically. In some instances, the majority of the time, currently, they're intervening with chemical spray. This is going to change it. If you have two youth fighting or someone assaulting the staff or whatever the case may be, we're going to have to use physical restraint, just physically intervene. So it's something that we have to prepare our staff for. They have to increase these staffing ratios was another thing. Our plan requires a 1-to-5 staffing ratio. PREA, Prison Rape Elimination Act, is only 1-to-8 mandated. We don't know if we would need 1-to-5 throughout the entire facility, but definitely in some units, we probably need that, a 1-to-5. We probably operate well within 1-to-8 in other units. So there's different things that we could take into consideration and implement, but you definitely need the appropriate use of force training. De-escalation is key for situations where it's a controlled situation and we could have care teams, mental health involved to de-escalate the situation. But when it's a significant disturbance or an assault on staff or an assault on youth, when verbal commands are not working, physical intervention will have to be something that we have to employ, basically. Not sure if that completely answers your question, Commissioner Meredith. If you have some additional questions, I could.
It answers most of it, and I agree that there's a time that you may have to do physical intervention, and I think once some of the other commissioners are up to speed on what that means, it'll be more understandable. But again, the mental health issues you pointed out, teaming up with staff responding to an incident, I think is also critical.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Garcia-Leyes, you're up.
Thank you. First, I have some questions for Wendy. So 45 days to present a plan to the board starting 3 weeks ago. So we're halfway through the time.
No, actually, it is 45 days to phase out the use of OC spray in those units. So there was some actually back and forth about which was the interpretation of that, but it has been agreed that it is 45 days for phase out. However, there was also an agreement that it would be 45 business days, which is what gets us to the February 27th date.
Okay, that's helpful because reading the resolution, there's little commas separating off.
Right.
It was unclear. Okay, good. Okay. So it also says that this will be done in collaboration with the POC. You said you've been working on it every day. I have not worked on it at all or collaborated at all. So I'm expecting that collaboration is been your work. How's it going?
Sure. Thank you for asking. So me and Sarah and Erica and Jennifer and Janae and Ismail, all of us have been working and we have been meeting with probation and OIG. That's where we've gotten most of this has been information gathering. Also, Sarah and Erica actually went to Central this week, as well as Frankie, to look at some of the housing classifications, make sure the kids are where the report said they are, and talk to a few folks about how things are going. We're actually instructed specifically in the motion to interview youth about ensuring that the reports that we're receiving are accurate. We also, Deputy Chief Fletcher has already made some changes to the weekly OC deployment reports, adding some additional information, including the gender of the person who was sprayed, as well as the shift on whether it's AM, PM, or night that the spray occurred. And we're continuing to work with the department to get some of the new data. So there has been a lot of progress, and we're hoping that that progress will be reflected in showing lower numbers of sprays, obviously, in the targeted units. Deputy Chief Fletcher is actually very quick usually about the turnaround. Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we usually get that information about 10 days old. So it's weekly, and we get it about 10 days after the week ends.
So there's a lot of components to the motion, but I really want to stay focused on that number one that says that, well, what does it say in terms of the conversations you've had with probation? Does it mean no one's allowed to bring pepper spray into those units? Could it possibly mean if there was a riot, nobody could be called in? Can you give me a sense of more specifically what it means in these discussions to, by February, not pepper spray women and developmentally disabled youth?
Sure, that's a great question, actually. And I think maybe a component of that question has some legal aspects to it that I don't feel qualified to answer, especially in terms of there being some kind of very serious incident. And I will use that word as vaguely as possible because I'm not sure exactly what takes an incident up to a place where the rules would be suspended, some kind of an emergency. But in general, my understanding, and I'd love to know what Adam and Luis think about this, is that it means that what is currently the statistics show that there's about a spray a day in the facilities, that those staff who are working in the specific units housing girls and gender expansive youth and developmental disabilities, which is 3 units or 6 units, depending on how you count, because the units are double, will not be carrying spray with them anymore. So whether someone could come in to use spray in an emergency situation, I'm not sure it's something we've talked about, but I will definitely put it on my list to discuss. Adam or Luis, do you have a different interpretation as to what that actual phase out means?
I don't have a different interpretation. I think you're correct, Wendy.
Nor do I. And Valerie, I don't know if I apologize, Commissioner Garcia-Leyes, but I know Valerie's on the ground. I don't know if this particular issue has come up in conversation quite yet. If it's something that we've envisioned how we would react or respond.
Yes, it has come up and we haven't really discussed it in great detail, but the question has been asked by several people, including staff.
One thing I'll add is that in the extremely detailed original phase out spray that Mr. Dominguez was quite involved in creating, there are phase outs that include having OC spray available in a locked cabinet so that staff aren't carrying it with them on their person, but it could be used in a more extreme situation. That is not what is contemplated by this motion, but it certainly is part of the phase out spray, the phase out plan that was originally adopted by probation at the board's request after OIG's report came out in 2018.
Mr. Huntsman, I just saw you raise your hand, and I actually, since I'm asking about collaboration, I did want to hear whether or not the OIG's office, you or Mr. Bates have anything to add.
I just want to step back a second and say, in 2018, we issued a report regarding problems regarding pepper spray use. The board gave an unambiguous directive, and it was completely not implemented. That directive resulted in a plan involving a tiered phase out, as Wendy has pointed out correctly, and that was not implemented. As has been pointed out throughout the state of California, pepper spray is not used in this situation. That doesn't mean we need to go to outside the state of California to find how professionals deal with this. It means we need to actually stop using pepper spray. I realize there are complications with that. I will point out that we're currently under a settlement agreement with DOJ, which we're failing miserably on, and we need to step up and actually comply with our legal obligations. Otherwise, as Wendy alluded to, this will become a legal issue, and we don't want that to happen. We want this to be LA County addressing this problem. So basically what the board is saying, I'll translate, time's up. So we're now, you got 45 days and it's been turned into business days, which I think is amusing in a sick way, because every day is a business day in our facilities for our staff and our youth. Phase out means phase out. All that pretty talk about having a process, we blew it. So now it's time to convert to the correct way in a limited set of facilities. But ultimately, we need to do this across the board on all our facilities. And I think that, as you heard repeatedly from probation, part of our problem is a staffing problem. There's a simple solution for that, which is to bring in staff, as probation has done on a case-by-case basis, from other areas in which we are not constitutionally obligated to have staff working on, but to bring them to work in the area in which we are constitutionally obligated. When we become the parent for youth, even up to age 25, we have a constitutional obligation to the ways we treat them, and we have to do it appropriately. So I think all this talk about training and planning and all that leaves us discussing whether or not we're going to have a plan in 45 days is off topic. This is the time's up motion from the board, and it's time to really for probation to step in and correct these problems, to bring in staff from outside the box into the box, so that we have sufficient people on site, properly trained. I'll get into in a minute when we get into our reports regarding the DOJ settlement, but we're not training. So we need to do that, and to do that, we need to beef up staff. I think every time I hear anybody from probation talk, they talk about that need, and again, there's a simple solution for it. So I would just say it's time for a more all hands on deck approach.
Thanks. I have no more questions.
Thanks, Max. Thanks, Commissioner Garcia-Leyes. Up next, we have Commissioner Nung.
Yes, thank you. I just want to start off by thanking everyone involved in this. I appreciated reading the reports from Wendy from the POC and Mr. Huntsman's office. There's a lot going on, and I just want to thank everyone, POC, OIG, probation, all the way from leadership down to line staff who are volunteering, right, to help implement that. I just have two questions that popped up as I was reading through this. One is for probation. We keep on talking a lot, and it's been mentioned before, about how you need properly trained staff. And when I've looked at the training schedules for both the academy and the, however we want to call them, the DOJ trainings, the cohort trainings, a lot of this, the use of force, even chemical agents, defensive tactics, everything seems to be in week 2. And I know Academy won't get to week 2, I believe, until February 13th. I was recently told that that second week training, which seems really critical for this motion, isn't going to be happening until February either. And I see that only 22% of staff have done both weeks of the training. And even then, I don't know if those are a refresher or anything. So I'm just wondering if you feel like by this deadline at the end of February that you will have enough staff fully properly trained, specifically in the modules that are needed, which seem to be week 2, given what your plan is, or do you have a plan to make sure you get to that point by February 27th?
We do. We're doing the best that we can getting all this training out and again, I will say again, the staffing being what it is and such a huge percentage of our staff out on some kind of leave makes it really challenging for us to then pull people offline and put them in a week-long training, a 2-week-long training. We have a lot of training coming down all at once. You know, we have a new room check system, a safety check system that's being implemented. We have a lot of different things happening all at the same time with the same sort of pool of staff, those who happen to be showing up to work at the moment. So it is an ambitious plan. We believe that we will be able to get it done before the February deadline. As Ms. Van Kirk mentioned, there are folks who are interested and or volunteering to come and work in these units. And so those are the folks that we're going to identify and focus on first while we continue to train the rest of the institution.
Okay, I guess when we have the volunteers, Ms. Van Kirk also mentioned that some of those volunteers were contingent upon getting additional supports, including training. So just clarify, all those volunteers, some of those volunteers haven't had the full training needed, right? They would need to volunteer and have those all done before February as well, correct? Or the deadline?
They would, and I don't have the specific individuals of who's had the training and who has not, but yes, that would be the intention, is that those folks are trained and prepared.
Okay.
And I can speak a little bit more on that. So I have recently received the list of names, and we are going to compare it to who has already had the training to see who's already ready to go. You know, we also have new recruits coming out who will not have ever had spray. We have a class graduating and starting Monday, and then they'll go through 40 hours. So sprinkling some of those staff across those units, we don't want to put all new staff in those units, but sprinkling them around those units will also help us. And so once we look at the list and compare it to what staff have already had training, and then try to get the other ones in in what they need and what will make them feel comfortable as well.
Thank you. And I'm sure, and I appreciate that, and just I'm sure that all those closely involved will be able to get those schedules. It sounds like new training things, modules will have to be put in. So I appreciate that. I just wanted to flag that issue. And then the other question I have, oh my gosh, Mr. Patino, I've asked you this about it a lot. So I know that one of the big things and major things that I appreciate people noticing and noting is the importance of data, and the importance especially of like staff identification. When you hear that from staff too, that it's not everyone, it may just be some people. We just never know how many staff, or in this case, sort of like the people who like kind of repeat users, right? And I know that's a directive for the OIG to focus on that. And one of the big things is this early intervention system that has been stated as will be clutch to being able to identify these staff. So I know it's always in labor negotiations, but wanted to ask again if there was an exact timeline or some kind of timeline for when that system will actually be up and running. And until that happens, I just want to urge that you really lean into, until it gets up and running, working with the OIG's office to really figure out a way to do this. I was concerned in the report about how it's a little slow, and I'm not saying it's, I just want to say that I hope that you work closely with the OIG on figuring out how to make sure you can track the staff, the multiple incident staff, but also just an update on the early intervention system would be great too.
So I don't have a hard and fast timeline. The policy's been drafted, which is a huge step. So the policy then gets vetted, and then the conversations can start in earnest with labor. We think we can start piloting and have something by spring. So late March, early April, we can have something in place. In the meantime, though, these are some of the conversations that we've had with POC, with OIG as well over the last couple of weeks in preparation for kind of these ongoing responses that are required by the motion, is really putting our heads together to figure out what are some ways in the interim that we can start to track this together. It's difficult given the data that we do have at our disposal, and as we've shared and folks are aware, kind of person by person, incident by incident, having having staff available to track all of those things to see if there are any issues. So we're in the process of finding a way in the interim, but we do think once we can quickly get through some of the conversations with labor, which we believe will be extensive. I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth on this, just to be frank. It's a big implementation. Supervisors and managers will need to be trained on how best to use this tool, and it really is a tool, not only a management tool, but it's something where we can identify very specific needs that staff may have around training and policy refreshers and things like that. So we're hopeful that we can get this going in the next couple of months and implemented in the spring, early April.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kakani, you're up.
Thank you. I just want to start by thanking Mr. Huntsman for his comments, because they were largely my comments as well. And I just wanted to respond to one thing I think that Commissioner Meredith had mentioned about, staff saying that there aren't any consequences for young people. But I think it's important to remember that the caging of children is quite the consequence. And whether they are 25 or whether they are 15, they are still young people. Their prefrontal cortex is still developing. So it's I think, important to have that lens. The questions I have are related to, staffing, and this idea that there is this shortage of staffing and that there is a legal obligation to staffing these facilities. So I guess, what is the probation department doing to ensure that the correct number of people are showing up, given the repeated reference to large numbers, large percentages of folks being out on leave or calling out?
So we've sought to incentivize staff. We have folks coming in from the field who are continuing to be deployed to kind of fill some of the gaps that we have. We're working really closely with Department of Human Resources on the back end, kind of from a leave management perspective, where we look at some of the ongoing leaves that we're seeing from folks and trying to determine if there's ways that we can get people back to work. So that has not, unfortunately, bared as much fruit as we had hoped. So we're continuing to really rely heavily on the deployments from the field. We're working really closely with CEO on that, just to continue the conversation. We've discussed at length with the board offices as well about what kinds of incentives can we continue to continue to get the support that we need. And right now, that's kind of where we are. There's a couple of other options that we're kicking around, trying to understand, how much longer this is going to go on, and if we don't start to see folks coming back, soon, what other measures may we be able to deploy and implement to make sure that we have the appropriate number of staffing? Because as Mr. Dominguez mentioned, right, and Ms. Van Kirk lives this moment by moment, frankly. We saw a lot of COVID in December, and we're still seeing some of those issues now. So a lot of staff are sick. And then we had the holidays, which is always a challenge to staff during the holidays. So we've really been relying on other probation staff coming in to help us get as much coverage as possible. So it remains an ongoing challenge. We've tried to attack it from a couple different angles. We've reached out to staff. We've done surveys of staff to understand what it is that their concerns are. They continually raise safety and support as issues. So we've tried to mitigate those as much as possible. We are, in fact, working, like I said, with DHR on a couple different angles. But one thing that's coming soon is we're bringing on a consultant to help us with some of the culture and climate work, trying to get a deeper understanding of what exactly is going on here, and how to address some of the ongoing concerns that staff have raised, and what are some concrete things that we can put in place so that we have some more sustainable staffing in the halls.
And okay, so I guess there's clearly a hole as we're speaking right now, right? Like as of today, as of tomorrow, as of yesterday. And so is there I don't know, is it like within a week? Is it by February, whenever this like phase out date is there a date by which, there can be something that resembles I don't know, a staff that allows young people to access their education, young people to access rec time, young people to access visitation, you know, because many of the other reports indicated that those things weren't happening. And like, I don't know, it seems fairly obvious to me the role that access to those things might impact kind of how a young person is feeling, and then how they, you know, display that frustration then results in the use of OC spray. So just kind of curious.
So we think in the next couple of weeks we'll see some relief. We have 15 folks graduating today. 11 will go to Barry J. 4 will go to Central Juvenile Hall. Or do I have that wrong, Valerie? 15 are graduating today.
11 are going to Central.
It's the other way around. Thank you. We have another academy that's scheduled to graduate in a couple of weeks, in early February. That's 26 more staff that'll get to the line. We have another academy starting January 20th. Right now, that's between 20 and 30. I don't know the exact number because we're still making final offers now. So we'll start to see more staff hit the line, which is really encouraging. We hope that that's one of the things that will bring people back. We know that there's safety in numbers. When we talk to our labor partners, for example, one of the things that we know is if there are more staff there, it makes everyone feel safer, including the young people. And so that will bring some staff back to work. So we're trying to solve it through hiring a little bit. That's a slow process. We didn't hire for the better part of 18 months to 2 years, not really meaningfully. So we were not keeping up with attrition. We've lost about 150 staff, I think, in the last calendar year. And we really haven't done any hiring just to keep up with attrition. And some of those folks have resigned, but some of them got promoted. A lot of them retired, things like that. And so that part of it is really, really challenging. And we know that, you know, there's a hiring freeze and things like that, whether it's symbolic or not, there is a hiring freeze. So we were not keeping up with attrition for a very long period of time. An agency like ours can't really ever stop hiring because people promote, people move on. We have to keep those academies going. And so we're in the process of doing that now. We're running them concurrently. We have 2 happening as we speak. Another one, as I said, starts on the 20th. That's one direction. The other direction, hopefully, is on the back end, that we actually get people back to work. And we're leaning very heavily on DHR to help us to really analyze and evaluate some of the leaves to make sure they're legitimate, frankly. But we do have folks that get injured. We do have folks who have to go out. And part of that stems from some of the assaults that have happened as a result of staffing and some of the other issues that we have. So it is front and center for us. It is something that we're trying to address on multiple fronts. We certainly understand how critical it is to get bodies in there. And like I said, we're working on it from multiple angles. We have credible messengers starting in the next, and this is sort of subpart of the motion itself, but we have credible messengers coming in to support SYTF. We're working very closely with Department of Youth Development to grow that as much as possible so that we can get more bodies in there to supplement what we're doing, not to take, you know, probation jobs away, but to help be another person in there to build rapport with young people, to try to de-escalate and do all the things that we're seeking to do as well.
My second question is related to this line in the report back by the OIG around the phase out of OC spray that states probation department reported that staff expressing a willingness to remain in these units will stay to assist in the implementation of the phase out plan. It will explore finding volunteers willing to be assigned to these units to assist with the implementing of the phase out plan. And it will consider moving staff who express hesitation with assisting with the phase out. I guess I'm like struggling with that, like the reading of that, because it's like a directive, it's a mandate. It's not it's not like a choice as to like, I mean, I guess it has been a choice for the last 2 years that the probation department staff have decided to ignore the directive to eliminate OC spray. But I'm curious like about how the phase out and the elimination of OC spray has been communicated to staff, if there are staff who are expressing hesitation with assisting the phase out, because I don't know, the way I'm reading it, it feels like it's being presented as a choice, but the way it's been laid out by the board, it's not really a choice. So if you could just.
That was information that was provided to us during our meeting that Wendy spoke of. So perhaps Adam could further explain what was meant by that when.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll do my best. And Ms. Van Kirk's been talking with her staff, but it is not a choice. But as we're sort of starting in these 2 units very, very quickly, we've sought to identify staff who are maybe a little bit further along in their journey, frankly, in getting to this point. But we've been pretty clear with staff that this is happening, and so we want to make sure that this is as smooth as possible. And in my mind, as a test case, frankly, hey, we've done this, it's working. Now we're moving on to the next units. But I'll let Ms. Van Kirk speak to this a little bit more.
So that was kind of the purpose of bringing the supervisors in and meeting with them face to face, because they're going to be messaging across the line to their staff. We allowed them to speak. There was a lot of conversation about teams, right? Consistency. So by getting volunteers initially, these are people saying, okay, I'll work in these units. Now we believe that with them volunteering and knowing they won't have spray, that we will not struggle to staff the units so much initially. Everybody is aware that I don't want to say everybody, the supervisors are supposed to message that this is starting with this identified population in the December 20th motion. However, it will be across the board.
And if I could add in,
I'm sorry, that was kind of the concept behind meeting with the supervisors first and surveying.
the point made is correct. It is not optional. In weighing in and collaborating on this point, I think it's an excellent approach by probation to find out who are your enthusiastic participants and to prioritize them. But this is a mandate. It's a mandate from the board. It's a mandate from, as we are aware, from a settlement with DOJ and a constitutional mandate. So we don't have an option. So we got to start with volunteers, and then you start going to the people who don't back up fast enough. And eventually you go to field staff. And it is the obligation of management to put enough people in the room so that we can manage safely our youth and staff population without pepper spray. And that is an absolute mandate. It is not an option. So to the extent that that language was ambiguous on that, I apologize for it. It is absolutely, we have a deadline, and I hope that the management of probation meets it, because as I've said, that we're now in front of a judge. So our time is up.
And my last question was related to, with the DOJ settlement came $13 million to phase out OC spray. Just curious if there's like any accounting for those dollars and like what it's been spent on, if it's been spent, the effectiveness of what it's been spent on, if there's any of that.
I will need to go back and gather that information specifically on what those dollars were spent.
Okay, yeah, I'd appreciate that, I guess. And lastly, just curious, what the consequences are if by February there is still an issue with phasing out OC spray, at least as it relates to these specific units where these like identified populations are. But
I'll just answer that practically. This is a board directive. So as in 2019, the board gave a directive, it wasn't followed. As you heard from Wendy, the board expressed its opinion collectively about the fact that its directive was not followed, and it's made another directive. What the consequence is if the directive is not followed will be up to the board, and they'll decide that. But as I say, we're sitting in front of a judge. We have a DOJ settlement. Long before we ever get to that process, we're going to have to deal with a monitor and DOJ attorneys and ultimately a judge. And these actions, although they're not written into the settlement agreement, directly coincide to the subject matter of the settlement agreement. And at some point, we're going to end up with a court order. Boy, I hope that point is sooner rather than later. And I'll go into more detail why based on our reports. But I think that the short-term answer is the board will probably take some kind of action. The longer-term action is a legal consequence for the county.
thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Jackson, you're up.
Yes, I have a final question. And, I want to be more forward looking, but I've been very eager to get more of the story behind the deployments in the units with more vulnerable populations. And, the POC has not been able to review the videos. And so this is a question for the OIG, if you're able to answer on whether in reviewing, well, first of all, have you been able to review any of the videos? And in cases where you may have been able to, were there any cases in which it appeared that deployments of the spray was wrongful or unjustified, or we're not there yet?
We're not there yet. I think as I've hit this point before, the board ordered that we receive a certain amount of staffing to conduct the kind of work that you're talking about, and the CEO did not provide it to us. So we are understaffed, and I'm using my current staff to comply with our monitoring duties with DOJ, as well as these reporting points. So we're not doing a significant amount of video review of general use of force. We're doing spot work in order to issue the reports and draw the conclusions that we'll discuss shortly. So the short answer is that's not happening. The good news is that when we've made requests for video and other documentation from the probation, they have been completely cooperative and provided us the things we've asked for. So although I'm sorry that this body cannot look at video yet, we have been able to look at video and do some analysis. But everything we've seen is negative in terms of the whether or not there's an effective process for monitoring and supervising force, for disciplining based upon it. We have a very serious problem there. But that's a different question than the one of on a day-to-day basis. Why are we seeing OC spray continue to be used? And when we phase it out, what's going to happen? Is there going to be an uptick in assaults? Are we going to need that additional staff? I can't answer that effectively based on real video review. But I think for the answers you're hearing here, I don't think probation can answer it either, which is, I think, more troubling to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm especially invested in that part of this whole issue and process. And I think that if there are unjustified cases and if there's some sort of abusive element, we want to know about it and we want it to be addressed in a very specific way. I was also hoping that the provisions in the plan to phase out was especially directly tied to what was witnessed in the video, so that the examples given in trainings and things like that would be, based on real life events, right? We want this to be effective. We don't want it to be generalized or theoretical. And I think that the video content plays a large role in that.
I think that's absolutely correct. And all this training, which we've received millions of dollars for, and which we are now under order by a court to implement, that training to be meaningful has to be exactly what you're talking about. The people creating the trainings have to use real materials, engage in that winning hearts and minds that you've heard from probation management talking about, trying to get the staff to buy into this change. That's how you do it. You don't do it by just making a pronouncement and then ordering people to show up. You've got to engage at the union level, at the staff level, and ultimately convince your staff that they have the tools available to them to be humane in the way they treat youth and receive humane treatment themselves. That's absolutely essential, and it has to be with real examples from their experience. The idea of going to the regional center and having them tell you how to tell if somebody's developmentally disabled and that being sufficient training, that's not correct. So I think you're right, but again, this is the work that 3 years ago was supposed to be begun. I can't tell you whether or not probation has any meaningful and effective plan to engage in. All I can tell you is the mechanism that we have if they don't, which is to go back to that judge and get an order. And we've all seen how that process plays out in government over the years. It's not pretty. It's messy. It's expensive for the public. It's brutal for all the public employees. But it's like I say, time's up. It's the only option we have.
Sure. Thank you for that, Mr. Huntsman. Wendy, did you want to respond directly?
I did, if that's okay, Chair Carrillo.
Absolutely. We'll close with you, Wendy.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Jackson, for bringing that up. And I'd like to say two things with response. One, very specifically, is that prior to this motion and all of this work on phasing out at Central, there was a motion by this body to request to see specific incidents of OC spray in which the preceding event was a disturbance or NA. So something not including youth on youth violence or youth on staff violence. County Council made a preliminary determination that would need to go through OIG. It's my understanding OIG actually has received some of those videos. I will just say I don't happen to agree with that opinion. I believe that there are oversight bodies around the country who are able to take a vow of confidentiality with respect to seeing these things, and that we don't have to look at videos in a Brown Act sense to be able to have civilian oversight over reviewing these types of incidents. But that's something that will have to be determined in terms of the county council and the board making that decision about what the role is that the Probation Oversight Commission actually has over specific use of force cases within the facilities. But for now, I hope that OIG will be able to review those few cases where they had the particularly alarming preceding events, not including violence. I will be happy to follow up with Eric later on about making sure that they've seen those. I deeply respect what Mr. Huntsman is saying about the capacity of reviewing use of force and OC spray cases in general, but there's a small number of those that we have identified that I think are of particular concern.
Yeah, I mean, my complaint about staffing and concern about how we use our resources is a general one. And when we have specific identified cases, Eric and his team can certainly look at them. That is not a problem. The problem is how do we effectively use the resources you have with staff and Wendy and the resources we have in order to get change. And so that's my only qualm about how the process works. And I think our best mechanism at this point is that we're under a court order. And so that has to have teeth and that has to have consequence. And I hope that the ultimate orders that are issued by the court will include the POC. In the same way that the OIG has been made a monitor for the court, I think this POC body could be an effective built-in part of the reform of the probation department. But that is, as Wendy points out, county council has to figure out how to make that legal, and that's a challenge. And there are ways to work within the Brown Act and ways that you can't. There's real legal restrictions, and then also we have a judge who hopefully can make some orders that will allow us to do things within that framework. So it's a bit of a challenge, but to the extent that county council designates OIG as being the intermediary for that work, we will absolutely do it. That's how we ended up the monitor in the federal case. County council asked us to do it. We'll do it. Our resources go first to those legal obligations, and then secondarily to the other work that we choose to do. So we'll get that done.
Thanks everyone for a great discussion. We have to move on now to item number 4, which is to discuss and take appropriate action on the Los Angeles County Probation Oversight Commission Sexual Misconduct Ad Hoc Committee, including special hearings, research on victim support funds, and future plans. Wendy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And I'm pleased to be able to report back on some of the progress that we've made in coming up with some solutions about how to move forward as a commission and potentially as a county on this issue. I'm sure many of you are aware because of recent media that's attached to our agenda, there are now over 300 cases of allegations. Partially that's because there was a legal window that was open until December 31st that changed the statute of limitations and allowed for these types of lawsuits to be brought. But certainly the pure number of allegations is deeply concerning. As I mentioned at the last meeting, Commissioner Jackson and I have had the incredible opportunity to meet with some of the survivors who are parts of this, the allegations of sexual misconduct, as well as their attorneys. And since the last meeting, we have confirmed that they would like to go forward with hearings. And so the subcommittee will be meeting shortly to determine how to proceed that way. We had a great discussion about how that looks like a number of pillars where we look at an opportunity for healing and reconciliation with respect to survivors specifically, just the value in hearing their stories in general and uplifting those stories to the public. And then also the opportunity to ask questions of the department about their role in healing and prevention of these topics. On that issue, I want to talk about something very specific to the Probation Oversight Commission, and in my hope, something that will be spread to other commissions in the executive office as well, which is to make sure that all of our commissioners and folks who are going into the facilities have received proper training in PREA, the Prison Rape Elimination Act, and the prevention of sexual misconduct, and perhaps most importantly, the reporting of potential concerning events that happen while we are in the facilities. So the POC staff, as well as Chair Carrillo, attended that training that was given by Nathan Martinez, the PREA coordinator for the department. It was really an excellent use of my afternoon, and I've been through a lot of trainings like that over the course of my career, and a number of other commissioners will be going through that training over the next 2 weeks. So we hope that we can lead by example and be able to ensure that all the folks who are inside the facilities and have contact with youth are properly skilled in reporting misconduct and avoiding misconduct themselves. With respect to the fund, which is what I'm reporting back on today, we've actually received very little helpful information about the Michigan State Fund, which is the one that was established after the Larry Nassar case. I think it's old and also a different type of fund than we might be, a different type of case than we might be looking at here. But we actually have taken some steps forward on something that came up from a combination of ideas from Commissioner Canales and Dr. Reynoso. So at the last meeting, Commissioner Canales made a suggestion about making a list of community-based organizations that provide, was more than making a list, creating an inventory of community-based organizations that provide support for survivors, including especially mental health support. That's actually something we can go forward with immediately, and something where we can recruit our partners who are professionals in this with the Department of Mental Health and otherwise. And where that has taken off is the idea that potentially what we could do is help to connect folks with those services. And by connecting them, we're talking about through the provision of resources and or direct referrals to be able to support the community-based organizations that are working to support survivors and help provide the specific support that survivors are looking for according to their attorneys in the meeting we had with them. So this is something, County Council has been involved in these meetings, and these are all very complicated issues because there is a number of active lawsuits. So lots of obstacles to jump through, but I think this is a potential project that we can work on looking at the opportunities to provide either in the short or long term. So thank you, both Commissioner Canales and Dr. Reynoso, for your creative thoughts that I think might come up with a solution that works better than the idea of a county-run fund, which was the original concept. So then finally, I just want to say that I really appreciate County Council's involvement in this, because the way that I think the perception of the role of the Probation Oversight Commission of shining a light on these issues has been something that we have encountered significant support from folks to do, and I'm looking forward to being able to actually launch this project with the subcommittee and eventually this entire commission, and hold some valuable hearings that can help bring some reconciliation to members of our community and county.
Thank you so much for the verbal report, Wendy. Really appreciate that. Commissioners, we are going to take public comments on this issue first, then discuss as a commission. Wendy, do we have any written or live public comments for item number 4?
We actually had one pre-registered public comment. Janae, is that person on the attendees list at this point? But I don't see the name.
I'll try to unmute him.
Remind me of his name.
It was Daniel. I can't say the last name.
Let me see here. And
it's Tuano, but there is a Daniel without a last name that
if it's Bituano, that's former Commissioner Daniel Bituano, but I don't see, we do have a Daniel on the list. If you could raise your hand, if that's you, we'll call on you. But first, let's unmute James Maddox. And then Daniel, if that is you who wanted to make a comment, we would be happy to unmute you if you can raise your hand either by clicking the raise your hand function or dialing *3 on your phone. So James Maddox, we're going to unmute you and you can begin. Except you're not unmuted yet. Okay, now you are.
Afternoon.
Yeah.
Happy New Year. Draco was a 7th century Athenian lawgiver, 7th century before Christ. And I use that as a basis for what I'm going to say. The probation budget is slightly over, when $25 million becomes slight, we know we have a problem, is slightly over $1 billion. And as I have said on a number of occasions at these meetings, the problem seems to be, quote, our labor partners. And I have described that as the tail wagging the dog. The claims, what I'm suggesting is that maybe shut down probation. We get $350 million, give it to some of the counties surrounding us to manage the children who are under custody. And then you still have $850 million to manage the operation, to also pay for those claims that are going to come in, and they are coming in. Beware of that. Ultimately, and again, the executives can manage the paperwork of what's being done with our children in Ventura, Kern, San Bernardino, or Orange County. I just think that we need to think about shutting it down. This is a operation out of control, and it's a lot of money. And I'm really tired of hearing about our labor partners. Our labor partners are the tail wagging the dog. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Next up is Thomas. Thomas, you are unmuted. You can begin.
Hey, hello. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You can go on, Mr. Bell.
Okay, thank you. I was just a little stunned by that last comment, which is, I don't know, it kind of threw me off. But I just wanted to ask, I don't know if you guys can, but have you guys thought about talking to some of these staff who were accused? Or, you know, because just hearing everybody talk and stuff, it always seems like everybody's been guilty off the bat just because they've been accused of something. You know, and I know the president of your POC, I think he was in the same situation where he was accused of something he didn't do. So I know there's a lot of people who got taken offline that did not do anything. Their names are just mentioned, but they ain't no way in the world. Have you guys ever thought about talking to some of them as well, getting what they're going through, how their family is being affected right now, and and how upset, just what they're going through as well? Because they're technically, if they didn't do anything, they're getting put offline anyway, accused of this, they're victims too. And I feel like they need some support. They need to be talked to as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Daniel, thank you for raising your hand so we could see you, and we're going to unmute you.
To make public comment. Ultimately, I could agree, with both sides of the spectrum, but for me personally, being, a former commissioner and doing the work that I do, and going inside the halls and trying to create a program, I could just see, the lack of, support on both sides, the staff as well as the people that are being incarcerated. But ultimately, we have to keep in mind that these are youth. They don't really have decisions in where they go or how things work or any of that stuff, and a lot of the times they're acting out because of behaviors that were taught to them. So for me, I think it's just excuses for people to say that they could sit here and they could, basically torture and punish these young adults instead of giving them proper education, proper support and in a way to change their lives. I went in there and I seen so many kids in the compound that wanted to change their lives and wanted to read self-empowerment books and stuff like that. And for me, there's so many opportunities for collaboration between the nonprofits that are already existing and the probation department to basically, you know, commingle and become one. So that way the system that is already broken could be created anew and something better could take its place to where it's more therapeutic, you know, to where the future of, you know, our country, the young adults that are going to be leading us in the future have the proper tools to be able to change their lives and the proper education to make better decisions. And ultimately, when I went there, I seen a lack again on both sides. You know, the staff were, you know, calling out, and they could call out for months because they have so much paid time off and stuff like that. And I know if I called off for months, I would get fired. So for me, that's, you know, not okay. It's just not okay. It's unprofessional. And then on the flip side, because these staff are calling out, like the youth aren't being, you know, properly showered, going to school. A lot of them haven't been to class for weeks because the legal staff aren't showing up. Thank you.
Time today. Thank you. We have one call-in user. Your phone number starts with 951. We're going to send you an unmute request, and you need to dial *6 on your phone to unmute. Okay, we can hear you.
Good afternoon, commissioners. As we saw the governor implement early release for adult prisoners, has this been considered for the youth? And of course, I say this not for the violent offenders like level 707Bs, level 4. I might be saying that wrong, I apologize. But the youth with misdemeanor or nonviolent offenses that they've been convicted of, could we consider early releasing due to the fact that we have staffing shortages that you have not been able to overcome? And so I think that's something that should be considered, and some of that budgetary money could be used to continue their education once they're released, and, you know, facilitate their education and some kind of ongoing therapy or mental health and emotional support. But just like that one caller says, the tail is wagging the dog. I feel like the cart is being put before the horse. You have to have the right people in place for this to be successful at any level. And without the staff, it's already starting on the wrong foot. And so I think some major, you know, alternatives need to be considered, thinking out of the box. And so maybe early release for these youth is something to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Carrillo. That's the end of our public comment.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, callers. Commissioners, any questions, comments? Looking over here, Vice Chair Jackson, you're up.
Yeah, I don't have really much to add. We don't have really an update at this point. I would just want to reiterate how important it is, especially to me as someone who's helping lead this charge. It's been important to just allow the process to unfold organically, especially with like pending litigation, while at the same time making sure that it's shaped carefully and deliberately by the survivors for the outcome that they want. And so I'm just really looking forward to collaborating and participating in what I hope is going to be a positive and impactful process. That's all.
And I'll just add for anyone who knows someone, especially boys who maybe are now men who had been victims while they were in custody. You know, I really implore you to, you know, if it's through a therapist or your own courage, to come forward and let that be known. I was in Central Juvenile Hall this past Monday, and I spoke to a young boy who had been sprayed the day before twice. And I said, well, did you write a report? Is there a statement on what happened from your version of the incident? And he just said, no, like he didn't want to, he was too upset at the time, but then two, he just wasn't ready to, you know, tell anyone other than, I guess, suppose myself, but he didn't want to write a report on the incident. And it really bothered me. And it reminds me of unfortunately, sometimes these gender dynamics here about things happen, and in some cases, boys are ashamed or embarrassed, or and I'm sure girls are as well. I'm not saying girls are not, but just the call out is for if there is boys who are now men or still boys or your family members who know about these incidents, you know, we are all fully aware that this is just not happening to girls, they're happening to boys as well. So with that, any other commissioners want to chime in on this topic before we move on? Okay, seeing no one else, moving on. Moving on to item number 5, we will discuss and take appropriate action on the Los Angeles County Probation Oversight Commission's annual inspection of Central Juvenile Hall. Barry J. Nordoff and Campus Kilpatrick, and the full 2022 annual inspection report for presentation to the State of California's Board of Safety and Community Corrections, also known as BSCC, and the Board of Supervisors. The Los Angeles County Probation Department will report on progress the department has made with physical improvements to units at CJH, which is Central Juvenile Hall, and home-like environment. Improvements at Barry J. Nordoff, also known as Sylmar, including costs and timelines. First, we will hear from Wendy and Jennifer, and at the end of the presentation, we will open the floor to Bureau Chiefs Ms. Van Kirk and Ms. Kaufman to respond to any questions and comments. Wendy, please proceed.
Well, I'll start by saying I'm sorry that you have to listen to me again. I'm tired of my own voice. I'm sure you must be, and that Dr. Reynoso is not here, but she had a scheduling conflict today that was not flexible. So, but this work has really been compiled by Dr. Reynoso as well as Jennifer Ochoa Garcia, who's going to present with me today. She made the PowerPoint, they both drafted the report, but the actual inspections and the work were done by our commissioners. This is one of the key components of the Probation Oversight Commission are these annual inspections. It's something we have both a duty and the authority to do under the Welfare and Institutions Code, Section 240, as well as Title 15, Section 1313. And we take this job very seriously. We got very good advice from the BSCC liaison early on when we started, which is that the BSCC is responsible for doing inspections related to the facility's compliance with Title 15. And what they wanted the probation oversight commissioners to go into the facilities to do was to view these facilities through a very different lens, a lens that's much more like, if my child were in these facilities, or if I were in these facilities, would this feel reasonable, comfortable, safe to me? I don't think there's anyone better poised to do this than our commissioners, many of whom themselves were in these facilities or other incarceration facilities as young people and as adults. And who are advocates and attorneys and who know so many people who've spent many, many hours, days and months and years of their lives in these facilities. So I am pleased to report on the final 3 inspections today, but I do want, that's Barry J. Central and Campus Kilpatrick, but I do want to let you know that very soon we're going to be providing the full report. So you may remember that you've heard the inspections over the course of the calendar year. We did 2 pre-inspections at Kilpatrick and Central, and then inspections of all 8 open facilities, the 2 halls and the 6 camps. And have presented those. They're actually available on our website, which is probably on the next slide. And we're able to you're able to access all of those on our website. And soon you'll be able to access one full PDF that will have all of the reports for 2022, as well as the responses from probation. That's actually one thing that's changed this year from last year, is that probation and the POC have been working much more closely and frequently together with respect to these reports, with immediate sharing of any health, safety, welfare concerns with the site director, superintendent, and the chiefs, and then also very clear responses to questions that are posed in the inspections from probation. We have received responses to all of those questions from the prior reports and have received informal feedback on this current report, and looking forward to being able to share with you the formal feedback on those questions. So with that, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is the 2nd year of our existence and therefore our inspections. And a few things that are important is that the inspections are conducted by usually 2 commissioners. There are a couple of instances where there's only 1 commissioner in some of the smaller camps. as well as Probation Oversight Commission staff. And then perhaps the most important piece to remember about these is that they are a snapshot of one day. So that's useful, especially as we do them year after year. It's really helpful to go back and see how many people there were on this particular day in October at Barry J. Nydorf, but the information provided on the inspection is only for that day. That is both good and not good, depending on how things are going in the facility that day. And I think you'll see and hear some of the things from the narrative when you read the report that indicate that there are things that happen that may be uncommon, and things that happen I think we could see are very common in the facilities. And then finally, the demographic information you'll see on the snapshot page is provided by Probation or LACO or the partner agencies, depending on who, on what the information is. So you can go to the next slide. So here you'll see the snapshot for Barry J. Nydorf Juvenile Hall. So there, you'll see there are 205 young people there, 5 kids at court, around 210. The population has gone up and down this year, with most of the change happening with the predisposition population, which is by far the largest population at both of the halls. And many of those are graduates. I have had the opportunity to be in the SYTF units, both Unit X as well as RS, and lots of graduates in those units because they tend to be older. So you can go on to the next page and I will share with you the big themes that came up at Barry J. Nydorf, none of which should sound at all surprising since they're things that we talk about consistently, although some things that are very clearly outlined in the report. First of all, the lack of programming. This was, I think, particularly evident when we were in the SYTF units with lots of graduates, where not only is there not consistent programming overall, there are so many folks who are not in school every day. So there are big gaps of time where young people are watching movies, playing video games, listening to music, not engaged in programmatic activities. The commissioners report impressive partner services at Barry J. Collaborative Services. There was a significant concern brought up, and we've actually talked extensively about this in our meetings with Chief Patino about the SYTF policy. What that refers to in the report is about DSB staff, so staff of the halls, not being fully aware or understanding of RTSB or SYTF, and that's a lot of letters. So the hall staff not being aware of what the camp procedures are that apply to the young people who are in the secure track. Policy, we've learned, is maybe not the word that they use internally with probation, but rather a manual or other instructions on how things work, like the commissary, to be able to earn your points towards getting awards that are based on positive behavior intervention. So this was something that came up with a lot of staff. And then finally, and you'll see this as a theme throughout, the existence of outstanding work orders and just needs overall for improvements in the home-like environment. We actually learned this week that one of the units, Unit TV, that was vacant at the time of our inspection is now no longer vacant, and the home-like improvements there have been completed. So we're happy to see that a number of these issues have been addressed since the inspection was completed in October. And with that, I'll go on and turn it over to Jennifer. I will say, as I do that, I just want to mention a couple of things that I saw. I attended the inspection at Barry J. And that go along with these commissioner themes, which is that the inspectors, our commissioners, are able to have really profound conversations with the young people and the staff during this day. Folks are open and willing and interested in talking to them. And also we do get to see some of the challenges and obstacles that they encounter each day. So while I was shadowing one of the commissioners in one of the units, we saw some issues with the staffing crisis by not having enough staff to be able to move youth to where they needed to go. And then in another unit, while the commissioner was conducting interviews, watched the need for a search to occur and some questions about who was going to conduct the search, which brought up a lot of the issues around the use of the SEOs, the special enforcement officers, or other supervisors to conduct searches, which I think is also a part of the contraband issue, which we'll talk about later. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jennifer to talk about Central.
Oh, so I'm not over Central. I could talk about SYTF.
Oh, no,
so-
not, I'm sorry, Jennifer, my Jennifer. Jennifer.
Oh, okay.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Ochoa Garcia. I am the management analyst for the Probation Oversight Commission. And today I'm stepping in for Dr. Erika Reynoso. I hope I do her justice. So let's move forward with Central. As Wendy noted earlier, I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that a lot of the information here is from interviews, and the description of the facilities are directly from observations that came from the commissioners. But the demographic data and the numbers, all that information was given to the POC staff from the facility leadership. So we received that information from probation staff themselves. We didn't get this information from anyone else. It was given to us directly from the leadership at the facilities. In addition, we want to make sure to center the youth who are being housed in these facilities. You know, we as the POC have a requirement by the BSCC to conduct these inspections, but we are also a voice to the youth inside these facilities. And so that's something that we take to heart very much when we conduct these inspections. So moving forward here, we see the snapshot of the day at Central. It was reported that that day there were 169 youth physically at Central, as 15 were in court, meaning that 184 was the total population technically. We also see below agency information from the partner agencies. Again, the data that was provided here is also provided by the leadership from these partner agencies. Moving forward, these were some of the themes that we saw in the report that came out. You know, SEO presence, like pardon, I'm a little bit nervous. I usually don't do the presentations. I work in the back, so I apologize for my nerves. Moving forward, like Wendy had mentioned, there's SEO presence, and it's very palpable because of the military style clothing that they use. And so this sets forth a very punitive tone. And this was not only observed visually by the commissioners and the staff there, but it was also expressed to us by the youth and probation staff. During the interviews with the youth, many of them highlighted that there was lack of programming and how they felt misclassified in their units. And many of the commissioners in the report mentioned that they observed youth just watching YouTube or TV in their day rooms because there was lack of programming. Probation staff also highlighted their concerns related to contraband and how it's dropped through drones and just safety concerns in general. Again, this was also in the report, and if you read through everything, you'll see that it's there. A good thing that we also have to highlight was that commissioners were impressed with some of the staff. So one of the commissioners mentioned in the report that they saw that there was a tone of respect and dignity for the youth set by SDPO, because he was playing jazz. And when asked why he was doing this, he answered that he was doing it to center the youth and to help them calm down because they had class right before. And so he wanted to make sure that they had the calm and right mindset right before going to school, which to us was very impressive. Then again, you know, the work orders, that's something that popped out a lot, not only at Central, but in all the other inspections that we conducted. We saw that that's something that came up a lot. Like, you know, the work orders the length of time that they take to be fulfilled. So that's something else that arose. And these were the key inspection questions that came out from the information that we received. Again, the themes that I mentioned earlier are also related to our questions. And like Wendy mentioned earlier, a lot of these questions have already been answered, and we're very appreciative of this. And yeah, next is Kilpatrick, and Wendy will go ahead and do the presentation for that.
Thank you, Jennifer. And going from Central to Kilpatrick is a really interesting difference in terms of course, Central being such an old facility with very challenging physical components to the facility, and Campus Kilpatrick being probably one of the nicest county facilities that exists in any department in the county. So the inspection at Campus Kilpatrick, both this year, the pre-inspection and post-inspection, and last year is quite different than at other facilities, which with much less emphasis on the actual physical plant, since the facility is in excellent repair, and much more emphasis on the programming and the impact on the young people. So you can see from this snapshot that this is after the first cohort of SYTF youth had been moved. So this is these are SYTF youth, not the camp youth. So there were camp youth at Kilpatrick for a majority of the year, and then I wouldn't say majority of the year, the first part of the year, and then they phased out, and then we moved probation moved groups of the SYTF youth over. So a small group of young people, which gave an opportunity to really get a good look at what was going on in the beginnings of the SYTF programming at Campus Kilpatrick. So you can go to the next slide. So you'll see that the themes were regarding to positive engagement. I think you've heard Chief Fletcher talk about this a number of times, as well as Sam and some of the other folks who have been in the facility, that in general, the transition and the starting process of this SYTF programming there has been really positive. Also the need for age-appropriate programming. Specifically, there are sections of the inspection that discuss the need for college programming and the opportunities that the department might be able to bring to really address the desire to have this be not just a rehabilitative program, but a program that really prepares young people when they're ready to go home with being job ready and educationally ready for reentry. And then again, the theme here of the SYTF policy or SYTF manual, and the need to really understand what the SYTF program will be, make sure it's fully staffed. There are a lot of interesting insights to this in the report. And then finally, about work orders differently at Kilpatrick is a lot about some of the supply chain issues that Chief Bettino has talked about over the last months, and making sure that we can bring as many young people to Kilpatrick as possible until we till we're at capacity there. So going on to the questions on the next slide, those questions mostly relate to ensuring that the facility is secure, that youth have input in the programming decisions, and then also about the Bill of Rights, which we will be talking about extensively at our next meeting in January on the 26th. And then finally, a question that's of particular interest to me about grievances handled at this site. And I'm sure we'll hear from Ms. Kaufman about this. Apparently, there have not been any grievances yet at the site, which is, of course, good news. Although it's something that's really important to the Probation Oversight Commission as well as to OIG about making sure that we have a good process for handling grievances. And it takes on a different tone, I think, when you're talking about young people who are going to be incarcerated in the county for many years of their late childhood and early adulthood, about how grievances are accepted, processed, and provided opportunities for the young people to bring up concerns that they have about their well-being and their stay. So with that, we'll move on to the final slide, which this is the link to the report that we've discussed today. And like I said, eventually on our website, we will have the full report available. We'll also send that out in a link in an email to all of you who are on our email list. If you're not, go to the poc.lacounty.gov website and you can get on our email list. I'm so thankful to Probation for allowing these inspections to occur with a lot of flexibility for the commissioners to be able to really understand the facilities, spend all day there, interview lots of staff and youth. It works well as a collaborative experience. And then also the responses to probation, to our concerns and questions have been thorough. So with that, I would like to ask Ms. Kaufman and Ms. Van Kirk if they would like to make any initial comments, and then we can go to public comment and come back for commissioner comments. Ms. Kaufman, you want to start?
Sure. So, as you described earlier at Barry J. Nidor, the supervision is actually handled by Detention Services Bureau with some staff that have been redeployed from Campus Kilpatrick. And so the majority of the policies still fall under Detention Services Bureau, which are similar to our Residential Treatment Services Bureau, although the facility design is a little bit different. So I believe the Office of Youth Community Restoration was supposed to finalize regulations sometime in January for us to start working on our policy and practices for SYTF. But as of right now, we've been instructed to continue to follow the Title 15 for juvenile facilities. And so that's what we're continuing to do. So right now for the SYTS staff, we only have case managers. So they're not providing necessarily the daily supervision, but they're doing all the case management practices. And so I do believe there have been some grievances that have been at Barry J, but those are handled by somebody with Detention Services Bureau. And then for the youth at Kilpatrick, I think because they circle up every day and they, air any grievances that they may have or any concerns. They have regular youth councils and all those other things. I think that's probably why there haven't been any formal grievances filed. However, I'm sure that there has been some issues that they've expressed to the staff that are there, and that they're handling that on a case-by-case basis.
Great, thank you. And thank you for clarifying that. You're right. It was regarding just Kilpatrick. Ms. Van Kirk, did you want to make any comments about the inspections on the halls?
Yeah. Hi. So I just wanted to say it was nice to see something positive, that we have there are some impressive staff, because I truly believe that both facilities have really good staff that at times get a bad rap for some of the things that we're experiencing. But I want to touch on the programming and the issues regarding programming. We have an interim behavior management program right now that we're trying to build, and we are working with the monitor, the DOJ monitor, Mike Dempsey, with building a more robust behavior management program. And with their guidance, we're working on a timeline and trying to get something implemented here soon. But that, and it kind of goes back to some of the things that were said previously regarding OC spray. And, if we could have a better and a more robust BMP program, behavior management program, with more incentive for these youth, maybe some of these incidents would, right? We believe the incidents would probably be reduced. So that is a priority, and that is something that we're working on. And we actually have a team working with the facilities on doing that. So I did want to comment about that because it has been a common theme, and we are aware. And I think it's going to be brought up also with the OIG report. So I just wanted to comment on that.
I appreciate you bringing that up. In fact, at one of the recent employee town halls that we held, that was definitely a theme, that when you hear probation talk about the tools that they have, in particular in the halls, that we often think about things like OC spray, but it was made clear by the staff who were in the employee town hall that they were really talking about programming, about recreation, about education, about the positive behavior intervention and other tools that they could use to really encourage better rapport and just better safety all around for staff and youth. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And with that, Chair Carrillo, I will turn it over to you so you can turn it back to me for public comment.
Thank you, Wendy, and thanks everyone else for your input. Commissioners, before we discuss and take any action, I want to invite members of the public to comment on this item. Then we'll proceed with commissioners' comments. Wendy, please facilitate public comments for us. Do we have any written or live public comments for this item?
We do not have any written public comments, and I don't see any hand raised. If anyone would like to make public comment, please raise your hand or dial *3 on your phone, or we will move forward. I don't see any.
Okay, great.
Back over to you.
Thank you, Wendy. Commissioners, do we have any questions or comments on this item? Okay, already, Vice Chair Jackson, you're up.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Carrillo. And this question is going to be for Mr. Bettino. I'm one of the commissioners that conducted the inspections at Barry J. And I can't help but to feel like, especially when visiting the compound, there's like a sense of abandonment there, especially when it comes to the physical condition of the unit. I'd like to get an update on maybe the repairs. And I know you said there were some beautification plans, if you will, for the units. I'd like to hear about that because, I mean, I feel like there's some sort of correlation between poor behavior and a sort of harmful environment, or where they don't have a sense of pride of where they live, right? And coupled with poor access to programming. And a couple of young men expressed a real concern about being deprived of outdoor rec. They want to be on the grass. They want to hang out on the grass. So I'd like to, one, hear about the improvement plans for the unit, as well as any reasoning behind why they're not able to be on the grass outside of some high risk sort of categorization.
Sure. I was actually at Barry J just before this meeting to take a look at some of the work that's being done. Unit TV has been completed. So that's new floors, new furniture. There's actually soundproofing, some baffling that's up on the walls to try to mitigate some of the echo that you get in some of those living units. It makes it really hard to hear. Those of you that have been through there know exactly what I'm talking about when it's full and you're trying to have conversations. So we're hearing that it's helped a little bit, and we have some strategies to make it even better. So new furniture, new floor, new paint, new plumbing, lighting and electrical will come shortly. So that is complete, and we have young people there. I wasn't able to see it this morning, and we were there with our internal services division who's implemented all of the work for us, or department rather, not division, but they're on isolation quarantine, sorry. So there's some COVID there. We were not able to go in because of quarantine, and we certainly don't want a whole bunch of folks walking through when that's happening. Unit RS, which is also outside of the compound. So let me restate TV. We have SYTF youth there in TV. RS is also being worked on as we speak. So that's kind of in a demolition mode at the moment while they do similar work there. So again, it's going to be furniture, flooring, painting, electrical, plumbing where needed. And then we also walked through Unit Z, and one of the sides is almost complete. We're waiting to finalize the furniture and some of the plumbing work. There's new flooring down, so we're able to see that. Lots of folks doing work in that space to get it done in the next couple of weeks. So we have a timeline of a couple of weeks. There are new sinks are coming tomorrow and will be installed tomorrow in Unit Z. It's a lot brighter. The paint looks fresh. The windows up above have been scraped clear, which is really helpful. And so that part of it has been, it's encouraging to see, right? It's come a long way, I think, and really creates a better space for our young people. So the metal tables have also been removed and replaced, which is really great. That's one of those things you see right away when you come in, and feels very carceral. So that's where we are with the updates. So that's Barry J. Central Juvenile Hall, there's 3 units that are going through similar upgrade. And I don't have them right in front of me at the moment, but 3 of those units are being updated. And I'm sure somebody will text me or something so I can get those specific units. One of the things that we've identified though is that the DOJ calls for the entire facility to be remodeled in the home-like environment. And so we're working, so I'll back up. Timeline was to sort of work with CEO, get some dollars released to start the process, which is what we've done. So a lot of that is coming to completion in the next couple of weeks. we're working on the board letter for phase 2, which is really the entirety of both facilities. So Central and Barry J. We meet with ISD like twice. In fact, there's a meeting going on right now that I'm missing, like twice a week with their leadership to figure out how we're going to stagger the work. Ms. Van Kirk's team has been really helpful because we want to be as organized as possible. We want to prevent disruption to our kids, to our young people, as much as possible. So we don't want to have to move them around unit to unit while we fix something. Central Juvenile Hall creates some other challenges, as you have documented in your reports. There's HVAC issues and some things like that. Some of those buildings are just down. And so we have to be very coordinated and strategic about how we move young people out, to a new unit while the old one, and then when the empty one is there, ISD's plan is to basically work around the clock until it's done. So our timeline to get all of this done is still December 2023, which is very ambitious. I mean, those of you that have been in these facilities and seen kind of the state of disrepair, honestly, that's a lot of work that needs to be done in a pretty short timeline. But we have the commitment thus far of the CEO and the board to really move forward and get this done as quickly as possible. ISD has been a really great partner. They've been working with us really closely to make sure that we get all of that done. As opposed to the, or related to the second part of your question, I will defer to Ms. Van Kirk on that. I know we have had some opportunity to get the young people out on the grass, either Ms. Van Kirk or Ms. Kaufman, but I know that we have had the opportunity to do that a little bit more often, but I don't want to misspeak on some of the reasons why maybe that hasn't happened historically.
I can speak to it. Just in prior to the holidays, our staffing, as a result of the incentive and the deployment and the overtime that we're using from the field, and we had better staffing, and it's the youth were getting out on the grass. It has not happened as much recently. It hasn't happened as the staffing kind of started to hinder the movement. But we were able to get some of those units out on the grass. We hope, and we would like to continue to do that. But once the holidays hit, and the staffing numbers kind of started to drop again, but we have to have ample staff to supervise the youth when we move them outside of and onto the grass.
Thank you for that. I wanted to follow up with you, Mr. Patino, about the repairs. The first part of my question is, you didn't mention anything about unit X1 or X2. Those units are in the worst condition, in my opinion, and I haven't gotten any sort of status updates about those. Are there any plans to update those units as well?
So those will be part of phase 2. We'll move the young people out of there into the new units and then start phase 2 and ends.
Okay.
That'll be part of that, yeah.
Okay.
And again, it's coordinating with the operation to sort of, for lack of a better word, shuffle the population appropriately so that we have free space to go in there, work as quickly as we possibly can, and then shift on to the next.
Right. Thank you for that. So the other part of my question is, when we conducted the pre-inspection after the move of Central, a Excel sheet or some sort of itemization of where projects were, the progress of that was provided to the POC. We're not getting that any longer, but it was very helpful in that it showed us kind of what items were open, what was addressed, and kind of where progress truly was. I think for all of these projects, it would be very helpful to have those breakdowns for each facility.
So we can certainly provide that, and it's really, I think it's really two things that you're asking. One is the home like improvement document. So there's kind of a project management document that follows specifically that work, because ISD really is leading that effort. So what they have is effectively like a Gantt chart that shows progress and where various things are: painting, plumbing, electrical, things like that. The other part of it, though, I think what you're getting at, correct me if I'm wrong, is some of the general work orders. So there's work that's happening elsewhere that's not necessarily part of the home like improvement, but a sink broke, a toilet's clogged, something like that. That's probation staff who are monitoring a lot of that. Now, ISD may still be administering it, but the work order progress and things like that, that's what our team certainly is tracking. So we can get you both of those things. But I just want to be clear that they're separate. in a way, right? There's the regular just day-to-day work order, the lock broke, the thing is clogged. And then there's the home like improvement, two separate tracks, but we can get you all that information, sure.
Yep, I think I did kind of lump everything into one question, but yes, I was referring to the general improvements, especially for like girls' care. I'd like to know when that unit is going to be habitable again. The roofing, like those larger projects, like we just don't have any visibility on kind of where progress is, and it could be nice, coupled with the updates, the home like environment updates.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Jackson, Jessica, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that what you're referring to is this really helpful sheet that was created while Central was closed, that we were able to see. And I don't think they're actually making that document anymore, is what I've heard. Is that, am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, that was a
So-
requirement during that time period, but once the move was done, they stopped creating that document.
So I'm happy to work with Adam or with Ms. Van Kirk to get the two separate documents to be able to track those projects. But that document was awesome in terms of like how it put things together, and we could see exactly the progress on it. So if there's any way to go back to something like that with the facilities, it'd be much appreciated.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kakani, you're up.
Thank you. Something that I saw throughout many of the inspections of the different facilities was the like drug use and the number of young people who were under the influence of a number of different substances. And I know sometimes, and I appreciate the board passing a directive allowing kind of probation staff or facilities to have access to Narcan, but that kind of feels like it's after the fact, right? And we're not really focusing on the underlying issue of, why young people are using, the extent to which they're perhaps using that to cope with their circumstances, the extent to which were there issues connected to addiction. So just beyond the consequences and beyond the focus on like contraband coming in, and it seems like I don't know, so many of these agenda items feel like they're focused on the unmet needs of young people. And so I'm just, again, I don't know if there's any response to like what probation, the institution that is charged with caring for, rehabilitating, protecting these young people, what you all are doing to ensure that young people's needs are met, that they aren't just like sitting idly, that they have access to support at the very least, whether it's through mental health care, whether it's through AA, whether it's through NA, whether, I don't know, just curious how you all are responding to this beyond just consequences.
So I could take that one, Melinda. So we've been working with the Substance Abuse Prevention and Control, and they actually issued work orders, and they're supposed to begin treatment services for youth. They already do a client engagement navigation services assessment for the youth that enter into the juvenile halls, and then their treatment plan is supposed to be predicated on that. Typically, since the youth in the juvenile hall are not there for long durations of time, that hasn't been traditionally the practice. And so DMH has been doing individual substance abuse services with the youth. However, it should be coming up anytime now. They'll issue the contracts, and we'll be able to have services at both the camps and the halls, regular group services as well as individual with substance abuse prevention providers, and not just mental health.
So when you say soon, is that like next week? Is that like 2 months? What is the timeline?
Yeah, the goal was to be January 1st, obviously. And so I'll have to reach back out to our partners to see where the delays are. It may have just been, an issue of the solicitations being finalized and going through the motions of signatures and things of that nature. So we could provide that information hopefully by the next meeting.
Commissioner, was that it?
Yeah, sorry, I don't have any further questions.
Thank you. Let me jump in before I move on to Commissioner Nong. because I'm not satisfied with that response. I saw that no one else jumped in, so I'm assuming that's what you guys have for us. This contraband issue is definitely one that concerns me and should concern all of us, especially probation. One too many times now I've chimed in and talked about the youth behavior when I walk in, and they're just either doing things that seem completely out of norm, and then second of all, that staff is not doing anything about it. So I'm not sure if the kids are high along with the staff or what's going on, but to hear this really unsatisfactory response from probation really puts me in the position of just filing a motion to no longer wait for January 1st. That's obviously behind us, but to draft something or maybe let me look at it this way.
Well, Mr. Creo, I don't want to say that we have, so today, actually, we've been working with Juvenile Court Health Services on identification of under the influence and have trained the trainers. And so they are now going out and training all the staff within the units. We have the Narcan training that has been initiated at the camps. The Narcan is now in all of the AED units, and they're being trained by staff as well as the juvenile court health staff and their regular on-the-job trainings. And so the detection, and then also we are rolling out to retrain staff in narcotics testing, so that if they do witness or believe somebody's under the influence, then they could go ahead and test to see if there's an issue, and then we would call for a referral to mental health or juvenile court health services, depending on the specific issue, and as well, now we'll have the services to accompany that.
Thank you for adding that, and I'll use that in my response, and just say that using Centro as an example, that facility has been open for over 100 years. What I'm talking about is the people who are working there allowing this behavior to happen, either in whatever way they're responsible, maybe from just not doing anything about it. And so what I'm talking about is a contraband here. Things coming into the facility that should not be there, especially when they directed or that stuff is going directly to the children, the youth who are there. So I want to just propose a motion for the commission, and then we can get back to the commissioner. So excuse me, commissioners, but there's a motion on the floor by the chair and staff. If you can write this down, I can also send it to you. But I move the probation department, let me start over, I'm sorry. I move that the probation department provide the POC with a concrete plan on addressing the issues of contraband by facility within 30 days. The plan should include the following: a description of the preventative measures directors are taking at each facility to mitigate the risk of contraband. Number 2, details about the resources that are allocated to address this problem. It sounds like there's some already. And thirdly, details about the instructions staff members are given and steps that are to follow upon finding or witnessing contraband. I would ask the commission to second that before we open up the discussion.
I'll second it.
I got a second by Commissioner Meredith, and now the floor is open to discuss the motion on the floor. Any commissioners who wish to discuss this? I see a couple of hands up. Don, I'm not sure if you want to, if your hand is up for this motion.
No, it's up for something else about Mary J. I'll wait.
Okay. Dolores, is your hand up? Okay, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I'm just wondering if you could also include in the motion details to include rehabilitative process rather than punitive, or something, just to I mean, that the approach is, like with therapeutic or trauma informed care or something like that, and not like a punishment, building up a like, oh, we're going to take something from them, or I don't know specifically, but just to make sure that there's the care that's needed involved in the details.
So, Dolores, before we want to ask Don to either second that, does anyone want to help with that language before we, I mean, Dolores, not to put you on the spot, but if you want to repeat that one line that you need help with.
Chair Carrillo, you said your second bullet point was the resources allocated. I think you maybe could encompass that specifically the rehabilitative programming and trauma-informed approach with respect to the resources allocated, or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, exactly. Just so that it's detailed in there, so that it's, you know, that the approach is in line with the direction we're going anyways, and that it's in writing, you know, more holistic.
I support that, Don. If you do, just to stress that one point.
I'm good.
Okay, so I guess it's been altered and seconded by Commissioner Meredith. I see another hand. We're down now. Sean, was your hand up?
You know, I was gonna bring up some other points, but I think they're separate. They can wait until we see after the report. I'll bring them up then.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Don? Is your hand up again?
No, it's still up for my issues about Barry J.
Okay. Okay, with that, oh, I'm sorry, another hand is up. Commissioner Nung?
Yeah, thank you. I think the reason I'm pausing is I think that your motion was broad enough to capture some of the things that have been talked about. I just wanted to clarify. It'd be great to hear it read back, but I just want to clarify that. I think in the first bullet, when we're asking probation what preventive measures are being taken, it was to prevent the entry of contraband in, right? Whether it's
I'm gonna read that.
Can you read it again? And then can you read it again? Sorry, thanks.
Sure. So the bullet point you're describing is a description of the preventative measures directors are taking at each facility to mitigate the risk of contraband.
Okay. And then I just want to make sure that I think with what Commissioner Canales was saying, and I think looping back in what Commissioner Kakani was saying, it may be something about including, and I would like to know either what procedures or policies are taken when a young person or staff is identified as potentially using substantive, and including in that what services and supports are being offered. That captures what other commissioners were asking.
So I guess I would fall under the second bullet, and maybe we can maybe extend the motion after Commissioner Canales' comment and add that. Are you okay with it being there? Commissioner Nunn? Okay.
Yes.
I'm fine with that. Don, if you're okay with that, we can, okay. I see one more hand, Commissioner Garcia-Lees.
I have thought about something where it overlaps, particularly with your, which is that I would also like, as well as them coming back and telling us about how they respond, how do they collect information and data about how much contraband is coming in and where it's coming from? So if we could also include that.
That's fine with me. Don, if it's okay with you to alter it one more time, or maybe, okay.
Chair Carrillo, can I actually ask Dr. Gongora a question? Am I wrong, or is that one of the outstanding items on our information request list, is an inventory of contraband?
Gonna need to double check it. I think what we had asked for in regards to searches has been satisfied.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think it does need to be included.
Okay, I think the discussion is closed on this matter. Looks like it. Okay. Wendy, can we get a vote, please?
We can. I'm hoping if we can read back the full motion. I think I have it here, but if you want to read it, I think I have the additions to it. Could you read your original motion, then I'll add the additions to it?
The motion reads, I move that the probation department provide the POC with a concrete plan on addressing the issue of contraband by facility within 30 days. The plan shall include the following: a description of the preventative measures directors are taking at each facility to mitigate the risk of contraband, details about resources that are allocated to address this problem, details about the instructions staff members are given, and steps they are to follow upon finding or witnessing contraband.
Okay, and then the additions are under bullet point 2, resources allocated. That include the accessibility of rehabilitative trauma-informed programming with an approach consistent with the Youth Justice Reimagined approach, and then which services and supports are being offered in addition to which services and supports are being offered to youth around substance use issues, and then finally an inventory of contraband and how that data is being collected.
Correct. That's Canales, Commissioner Canales, I saw your hand was up. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My concern and my caution here is, being that we are making this motion, to probation, that it get turned into like, oh, well, we have the girlfriend under investigation, or this staff is bringing it in, or, the mom over here, and let's just arrest everybody on the street and we've solved the problem. It just reminds me of when I visited Norway, and we were told, one of the supervisors that went from another facility in the United States said, yeah, but we have drugs, and the Norwegian governor said, well, we do too. He said, and if you have the CEA, the DEA, the ATF, and the FBI, and still have not rid society of drugs, what makes you think you could rid an institution where there's drug users and drug dealers? The problem's not the drugs. The problem's the choice to use them. So I just don't want this to get turned into an aggressive tactic, is that as long as we arrest everybody, then we're good. That's my only concern with the motion and the language, and just really ensuring that that we're just going to develop tools that the youth might need to make different choices. And that's it. And probably nobody's going to agree with me on that, because, I'm more concerned, I guess, about a bigger picture, but that's just the way it is.
I agree, for what it's worth.
So do I. So the floor is back open. Commissioner Kakani, I see your hands up.
I was just going to say that I entirely agree. And I guess my biggest concern is that once again, this turns into like a consequences, like negative outcomes for young people, like restrictions for young people, and we don't ever address the underlying issues. So like, while I understand this is just a data request, or that, we're trying to get a sense of what the policies are, the protocols, the numbers, it still doesn't feel like it gets to like what a young person's needs are, and how we go about supporting them in a way that isn't focused on like punishment and consequences, but really addressing like the healing that needs to take place. So that's similar to Commissioner Canales. This is what's coming up for me.
And if I may, before I pass it on to Commissioner Nong, back to Monday when we were there, I was reminded once again, your first initial interaction with I suppose it's staff. I mean, they're hired staff, but it's that conveyor belt where you have to walk through it, empty out your pockets. And like, I feel like, this last time I put my phone into the conveyor belt and my keys, but that seems to just be for the show. And if that's the one thing, that's supposed to be staff are supposed to be walking through that thing as well. And so I'm just thinking the conveyor belt, long before the kids get to handle any substance. We're talking about all the steps prior to that is what this motion is supposed to focus on, the contraband coming into the facility. So I get the part that's being addressed here, but the spirit of the motion is about contraband coming in and how probation is handling that, recording it, and everything else that's been pointed out in this motion. Commissioner Nong?
Thank you. Very much appreciate the conversation. I'm hearing two things. There's both just a desire to know, because this is clearly an issue, what probation is doing about it, right? And then there's a question of like, is that the right response? Are there better responses? And so I'm wondering if there's some concept of suggesting or creating some kind of requirement suggestion that probation leaders like consult with certain people to come up with like an appropriate response, right? To it, so that you, just because already there are different expertise even already expressed just in conversation right now, that I think would be helpful and I think would address some concerns. I don't know if this means maybe waiting even just till the next meeting to figure out the motion on what it looks like, or maybe we can discuss it here, but just like unless it's just what has probation been doing up until this point, but then also as probation considers making any moves, like consulting with XYZ people. Where I'm stuck and wondering if we need more time is figuring out who that list of people should/could be.
Commissioner Dung, I think we're the right people. I get the fact of consultants and Ms. Coffin talked about a January 1st date that has expired. But I think that this motion is really to, bring this issue to the top. We're talking about not only in juvenile halls, but high schools where people are ODing. And I think the fact that this issue has been discussed one too many times, and we have just accepted the responses as being, okay, cool, you guys are taking care of that, move on to the next agenda item. This motion is really to just highlight the fact that we as a Probation Oversight Commission think it's very important that if the brass is using contraband as a problem, then they should also not only talk about it as a problem, but to address it internally as a problem. And these things that are being pointed out are not to harm the youth, but it's to prevent contraband from coming into the facility and what probation is doing about it. So I know it's sort of taken off into different areas here about all the potentially things that can go wrong or maybe how it can be viewed. But I think these 3 bullet points really indicate what we want back in 30 days from all facilities, not only the juvenile halls. And Adam, I'm not ignoring you, but just during the floor is open, so I can't involve you. If there's no more discussion, I see one more discussion. Commissioner Connie, go for it.
Sorry, thank you. I know that, this is focused on kind of like probation's role in this, and like, I think there's something about like rehabilitative, like services, whatever, like healing practices, resources that young people have access to. But just in like connecting with folks who are working with young people directly, who share that, they have clients leaving these facilities who have like issues related to drug use that they didn't have when they came in. So also curious kind of, or perhaps it can be added to the motion in addition to like resources available, also kind of like the spectrum of resources that young people have access to, not just while they're incarcerated, but when these issues come up, like what, I don't know, maybe this is too broad for this motion actually. But it just, I don't know, I guess my concern again is like the needs of young people that while we're focusing on probation, I feel like we're ignoring young people can be healthy and well. And so just trying to think if there's a way to incorporate like what this spectrum of services is that supports young people while they're incarcerated and their release.
I would argue that the response is prevent drugs from coming into the facility. What happens when they get out? It's endless, obviously. But at this point now, we're talking about what is probation doing to prevent these things from happening? If it's shooting down drones, searching people, I don't know. But like, I want to hear from probation and not assume what they're doing. Okay, Wendy, I think we're ready for a vote.
Okay, so I think does anybody feel like we need to read back the motion? You're good? Everybody's good? Okay. You want to hear it again, Dominique? All right, go ahead and read your portion of the motion, Frankie, and then I'll read the second part of it.
The motion reads, I move that the probation department provide the POC with a concrete plan on addressing the issue of contraband by facilities within 30 days. The plan shall include the following. 1, a description of the preventative measures directors are taking at each facility to mitigate the risk of contraband. 2, details about resources that are allocated to address this problem. 3, details about the instructions staff members are given and steps that are to follow upon finding or witnessing contraband.
Okay, and in addition to that, under the second bullet point of resources allocated, include rehabilitative programming and a trauma-informed approach to programming, as well as services and supports being offered around substance use and addiction. And then in addition, the inventory of contraband and how that data is being collected. Okay, so with that, call the roll. Please vote yes, no, or abstain. Commissioner Canales?
Yes, I guess, yes.
Commissioner Garcia Lays?
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson?
Aye.
Commissioner Kakani?
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis? Oh, Commissioner Lewis had to leave. He was getting on a plane to come home. Commissioner Meredith?
Yes.
Commissioner Nong?
Yes.
And Chair Carrillo?
Yes.
Okay, so with Commissioner Lewis being absent, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, commissioners. We're still on the same topic. There were some hands are brought down, but I see Don's is still up. Floor is yours, Don.
Okay, well, towards this issue, I was going to get Barry J in a second. Adam, I'm sorry, I think you become the sacrificial lamb for the department every freaking meeting. But having said that, I'm going to believe there's practices, policies, and procedures in place on the issue of contraband. And I say that, but I know when I go up to the camps in the East End, a couple of the camps, the perimeters actually have hiking trails right up next to the fence line. I've also seen there's been an issue of drones used in a couple of the camps. And one camp, I happened to be in the parking lot and I found a football there. And I happened to notice the football was empty and had been sliced open, which indicated to me that it had gone over the fence and came back. So some of the suggestions I've offered in the past is maybe use the reserve probation officers to provide some perimeter security and work in these things, or on visitation days, be present. Also, I talked to the state hospital police chief in Norwalk, which is a custody facility, and they do have contraband dogs and narcotics dogs that they offer to supplement probation at any time. We'd like to have them assist us. So I'm just tossing that out there for that. It's not our job to be operational. We're advisory. Now, getting back to Barry J. It's like every other day I'm getting phone calls or text messages out of Barry J on different issues. But I do a spot check out there and I go out there into X1 and X2 after a disturbance. And I noticed that the windows have been broken out and plywood had been put up to cover it. And up on the plywood is a big tag of a gang name. And I asked the DSO and he goes, "Oh yeah, that's the shot caller." I said, "Why is that up there? That should be removed immediately." And I was kind of just, shrugged off with it. And that was a major concern, is that, we got this activity going on. Who is really running that facility, us or them? Then I walk through and I see the meals. And I don't know who our food vendor is, but they're the most unappetizing looking meals I've ever seen. I don't think I'd eat one. And I noticed most of them weren't eaten, or they're just bits and pieces taken off. And it was, something we need to take a look at in the meals, because that might contribute to why people are acting out. And then I had two of the youth, well, actually one was an adult, say, "Look, if you were stuck in here 24/7, having to listen to rap music all day long, wouldn't you act out?" And I said, "I'd act out now because that rap music's getting to me, it's so loud." And he goes, "We have nothing to do. We talk about programming, but if we have programming, it's got to be very limited, because every time I've been there, they're sitting around watching videos or listening to rap music. And in one case, they were playing a game of who can stack the highest Cheerios with the DSO." So that was both an X1 and X2. So I'm just pointing that out, that I haven't been out there this week, so I don't know if that damage has been repaired or the graffiti's been removed, but that was kind of a concern. So I just wanted to share that. I hadn't had a chance to type it up. You don't have to comment. I was just tossing it out there, Adam.
Can we thank you, Commissioner Meredith. And on a couple of fronts, we agree. I mean, the tagging left up on plywood, understanding that it does take us some time to get the work order process to get the window replaced, but that is wholly unacceptable. And so I know that's one of the things that we're looking into. I do want to address, going back to the motion, I know that we've left it and it's been raised. We are happy to come back and provide a lot more detail on what is actually happening. We take this very, very seriously. There are some things that are in place that we certainly cannot. We'll have to have some conversation with council, actually, because there's some things in place we want to be able to brief you all on that may be better suited for a non-public setting. Things that are pending that are in place, things like that. But I think at the very least we can identify how we're doing some of the searching. We do have canines, as you are all aware, who can come in and search for either drugs or phones or both, and we bring them on a somewhat consistent basis just to make sure that we're that we're doing the best that we can to keep some of this out. And I don't know, Ms. Van Kirk, if there's more that you want to say about some of the concerns that Commissioner Meredith raised in addition, but I know that please know we do take this extremely seriously. One part is certainly the substance abuse services and the things that we can provide for young people. But to your point, Chair Carrillo, serious concerns about how this comes into the facility, who is either bringing it in or throwing it in or flying it in or whatever else, right? These are serious concerns that we do have. Commissioner Meredith mentioned one of our camps where we've added additional fencing to make it more difficult, with some nets and things like this. But we know as technological advances are made, it makes it more difficult to keep those things out. So yes, we do perimeter checks. Yes, we have folks who we've pulled in to assist with some of that, but we can certainly come back to you all with a more comprehensive, detailed analysis of all the things that we've done up to this point. And Ms. Van Kirk, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to share on that front.
Well, I was going to comment on some of the things that we have done, and you will get a more detailed in the response. You'll get more detail in the response. But one of the things we have had to do is increase our perimeter checks before movements, so we can hopefully find anything that might have been dropped or thrown over, things like that, prior to the kids coming out, the youth coming out onto the grounds. That includes recreation, school movements, all those things. Because if they know something's there, they will take off and try to run for it, or pick it up. And we're doing that, and we have increased those. We've increased searches. We've employed, and as you are aware, SEO does come in periodically to come in and do searches. They come with the dogs. We would love to get our own institutional dog for camps and halls, and Jennifer Kaufman and I have spoken to Chief Fletcher about that. So we're working on things. There's a few other things in place that hopefully we can address in writing as well.
Thank you both so much. Don, you're muted, so unmute, please.
I want to say we have a lot of good staff. I appreciate that, and I appreciate they're working shorthanded. And some of the frustration I'm sharing here with you, I get from staff because they don't know where to turn. So that's why I'm sharing some of this here.
Commissioner Canales, you're up.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment on the use of the dogs. And that you're trying to get like a live-in dog or whatever. Is the dog allowed around the youth, or is that just for the perimeter? I've been incarcerated before where they bring in the dogs, and it is a very traumatizing feeling, and it stays with you. Like when you're around a big dog that's barking, it just kind of triggers that. So I'm just wondering, this live-in dog, will it just be allowed in the housing units at random, or is it just for the perimeters? And then once again, I feel all the approaches, of course, it's like aggressive tactics of law enforcement, because that's what we have to do. We have to make probation camps completely free of drugs, even though the day they step 1 foot out, they will walk into a world of drugs. But, so I just want to know about the dog. Thank you.
So the dog won't be a live-in dog at the facility. The dog would be assigned to a handler. They're trained specifically either for narcotics or electronics. Obviously, narcotics would be our primary need.
Around the youth, though, or just around like the perimeter?
Perimeter, we usually remove the youth from the area when the dogs search the rooms and things like that. They are not around the dog. So that's, there's a whole procedure behind how that's done. I don't want to speak on SEO's part, because right now we're utilizing the K9 unit in SEO to do that. We also on occasion have a dog from the Sheriff's Department on visiting day that is outside of the facility. It doesn't seem like we've had one recently, but there's a whole plan in place. You know, we don't want to traumatize any of the youth by use of a dog, but the dog can sense the narcotics better than we can sometimes, all the time, usually. So, you know, we also have issues with our own staff, and we're addressing that as well. Yeah.
And I mean, if you could just get what you said, usually, the word usually, I understand. So therefore there's nothing, you know, like documented in writing as this is the procedure. Sometimes if the youth is around, they're around. And then on visiting day, because family members are often labeled, you know, criminalized just because they have an incarcerated loved one. So to take a dog out by the visitors, you know, and it's just the, you know, the assumption of guilt. And I understand to use aggressive tactics to not get drugs in because the drugs are harmful to the youth. But it's just some of the tactics that seem to repeat itself.
Yeah, and as I said, we haven't, the sheriff's department has not had the canine for quite some time. We don't see it on the weekends, but it was something that was being done in the past.
And when the canine are arrived, is there anybody that has to have sign off on prior approval, or the SCO can just show up at will with canine, or is there like a process?
It's all approved. There's a
It's
process
all approved in advance and scheduled. Yes.
Yeah. And just to be clear, there's not, the dogs show no aggression. It's a stop and sniff. They don't even bark.
They don't bark.
So they're just kind of there in the area, and we would love for commissioners to come kind of see them in action. I think it would be really helpful actually to watch our dogs work. They're super well trained. Our handlers they do this full time. They work with these dogs a lot. I think it would be great for the commissioners to come see, to watch them do their training exercises and things like that. OIG as well. We would love to have you all come see that.
So I'm envisioning right now that you just said that, kind of like when they walk them through the airport, like when you're waiting at the airport and then sometimes they go by with okay.
Yeah, it's a stop and sniff or a pause. If there's a hit, that's the most reaction response you'll see from the dog generally.
Okay, thank you.
Frankie, you're muted.
Thank you so much. Let's continue with this item here. Can I have a motion to accept the POC's 2022 inspection report?
I move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jackson, seconded by Commissioner
I second it.
Commissioner Kakani. Okay, discussion, any discussion on this motion? Okay, hearing none. Wendy, can you get a vote on this, please?
Yes, so we're voting to approve the POC's 2022 annual inspection report as presented. And also, if you wouldn't mind, Commissioner Jackson, if we could also say to submit that report to the BSCC and the Board of Supervisors. Is that acceptable to you and Commissioner Kakani?
Sure, I move to approve and submit the report to the Board of Supervisors, you said?
And the BSCC.
And the BSCC, yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kakani, that's okay with you? Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Canales? Commissioner Garcia-Lays?
Aye.
Commissioner Jackson?
Aye.
Commissioner Kakani? Did I not hear you, or did?
Sorry, maybe I pressed mute and unmute too fast. Aye.
Commissioner Meredith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nong?
Aye.
Commissioner Carrillo?
Oh, aye.
So with Commissioner Lewis being absent, the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Just to let people know, we're way behind schedule, but we have to proceed. But we might have to table something, but for now, we'll just move forward. Moving on to item number 6, we will discuss and take appropriate action on reports from Los Angeles County Office of Inspector General about progress the Los Angeles County Probation Department has made towards compliance with the Department of Justice, DOJ, settlement agreement, and the movement of youth from Central Juvenile Hall. Assistant Inspector Eric Gates will give OIG's report, followed by Chief Deputy Adam Bettino. Eric, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. First of all, good afternoon, commissioners. As you know, we issued our second Department of Justice report, and I won't go through it. I will trust that everyone's had an opportunity to read it or will do so in the near future. We found that there are a number of areas that continue to be an issue, areas where the department still is not in compliance with the Department of Justice settlement agreement. And I won't go into all the areas in an abundance of caution since we are short on time. But there are a number of areas that I think are noteworthy today. First is the requirement that there's proper documentation of OC spray decontamination. So in our review, we found that again, Central is not in compliance with the procedures that are required after a youth is sprayed with OC spray. They only followed the policy approximately 45% of the time. Barry J was 57%. And we made recommendations at the end of our report dealing with those failures to properly document the OC spray decontamination. And I will go into them specifically. They're available for everyone to see. The other area I think that's important to go over is the camera coverage and the importance that it plays in recording uses of force incidents. And Commissioner Jackson touched upon this earlier. We've reviewed video of uses of force, and we've discovered we've had in both of our reports a couple of incidents where there's an incident that's captured, but nothing is done from that. There's clearly some misconduct, but it's not properly reviewed as required by the Department of Justice settlement agreement. And so that's an issue. Central still is in the compliant area regarding having proper coverage, reviewing it. Barry J is not. And again, a lot of that is because Barry J just does not have the cameras available. And Adam can speak to this at some point better than I can, but it's my understanding that the cameras for Barry J have been purchased. There's an issue with delivery of them because of them coming from China. And then also I just heard recently, perhaps there's even an issue with manufacturing them because of computer chips. So again, Barry J is an issue where cameras are not there. So I think it would be prudent for the department to come up with ways to alleviate some issues that can come from not having camera coverage while those cameras are not in place. And we can speak with them regarding that as well. There's a grievance system that is set to start next month. And that is a completely different system for the youth to provide grievances. And also there's going to be a kiosk that will be available for youth to lodge their grievances. And I'm told that that will not be available until 2024. The other area that is very troubling is the failure to timely report uses of force incidents to FIRST, which is designed to be an independent committee, an independent body to review uses of force to determine if there was any misconduct. Unfortunately, the department was not in compliance during our last reporting period. It continues to be a problem. And we've even found out that some of the problems is just that the staff does not understand the process itself. So that's something that we will continue to look at because as we know, writing a report is extremely important, but having the backup of someone reviewing that report and determining whether or not there still might be misconduct involved is very important. And that, as we speak, is not happening as it should. And then the other report that we provided is the transfer report, and that was the transfer of the youth from Central to Barry J last year. And during our review, we found that even though the tone of the transfer presented to the PLC and the BSCC was that it was a surprise by the BSCC, and there was this grave need to move the youth in such an expedited manner. It does not appear that, in our opinion, it was a surprise that the probation department knew for a couple of months that this was possibly going to occur. So again, that's in the report. I won't belabor that. I believe Max may want to add some comments as well, so I'll save some of my time for him.
We're short on time, so I would just point out that Eric was polite when he addressed the question of not documenting force in a timely manner. The percentage of compliance in our first report over the summer was 0. The percentage of compliance in our second report that we just issued was 0. And your executive director contacted management of probation regarding an incident recently. When she contacted them, their compliance, they hadn't complied to that case. There were just a couple of the reports that were due weren't filed, and yet management came here to the POC and told you they didn't know the status of it. All they had to do was check their own computer system to see that they hadn't received the reports. We conducted an investigation a couple weeks later. And in that investigation, by the time I made my demand for documentation, some of the reports hadn't been filed, and they were then additionally filed. So it's very troubling. And as I say, we're in front of a judge now. So I suspect this will be handled through the legal system. With that, we'll answer any questions you have.
Thank you both so much. Let's see here. Wendy, do we have any written or live public comments for this item?
This is item number 6, right? So I believe we did have one pre-registered public comment, but was that also Daniel, Janae?
Yes, that was Daniel, and he's not online.
All right, so if anyone else would like to make public comment, you can email it to us at info@poc.lacounty.gov or raise your hand or dial *3 on your phone. But as of yet, we do not have anyone with their hands raised.
Okay, well, if someone logs on or raises their hand, we'll go back to them, Wendy. But for now, let's move forward. Commissioners, any question or comments on this item? I see one hand already. Commissioner Garcia-Leyes, you're up.
Mr. Huntsman, you said a couple times you've referred to the court case and to the possibility of a judge ordering some sort of remedy for this. Is there a hearing coming up? Is there anything? No. Okay.
Not currently. We report to a monitor, and the monitor reports to the DOJ attorney, and then ultimately they decide what action, if any, to take.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kakani, you're up.
Just by way of comments, I mean, this is egregious. This is like shameful. And I'm at a loss for words because like every time I read this, it blows my mind that this institution that gets $1 billion, half of that budget is dedicated to the incarceration of children. I'm just blown away by the lack of accountability. And while I know everyone says it, there are good probation officers, like this is an institutional failure. This is like beyond reform. This is, I don't know, my mind is blown. And I'm just shocked. And this is just also like the tiniest of sample sizes. So it like horrifies me to think about like what the entire set of data might show. And I'm curious what probation's response is, to be quite honest. Like what is the justification or what is the explanation for dozens, hundreds of days going by without like this process being completed from beginning to end? You know, it's not like this settlement was just filed yesterday. We're almost 2 years, right? It was like January 18th or something of 2021. We're 2 years into this process. And that like there is still not clarity on what it looks like for staff to file the, what is it, the use of force report or the physical intervention report, for other staff who are present to file the related reports, for it to be reviewed by the right people, for the right folks to know when it should be like reviewed or by whom it should be reviewed. Like what is happening? And I'm sorry for my lack of eloquence. This is horrific. So yeah, any sort of explanation would be appreciated.
Well, certainly, I'll do my best here. I mean, this is a problem that's been identified. Obviously, there was a call to develop this first response team to do some of the quality assurance, to come behind some of this backlog that we have with use of force reporting and things like that. And what I will say, it's not necessarily sufficient response, but I think a lot of these things are reported and documented, mostly in part. And so even the issue that Mr. Huntsman raised, we did have some of it. Some of the reports were done in a timely manner, others were not. And so those are very specific quality assurance measures that need to be put in place with supervisors and managers who are brought in to do specifically that, right? That's what our policy states, that's what the process is. And we've had a total deficiency in some of those areas. And there's really no excuse for it. There's a team in place that's trying to mitigate and work through some of that backlog to get all of this caught up and up to date. We've had regular conversations with our DOJ monitor, who Mr. Huntsman referenced, and he's provided some guidance to us about how to work through that and mitigate. But there's really no great excuse other than, some of the things that we've raised here, where staffing continues to be a problem. We've had folks who are deployed in from elsewhere who may be party to an incident and then need some additional handholding on how to complete forms because they've been deployed either during COVID, on an emergency basis, or now because we've had these staffing crises. So all those folks have access to the systems now. All those folks are expected to make sure that they're documenting things in a timely manner. Accountability goes up the chain, right, to the supervisors and to the managers, that it is their responsibility. Many of those folks are also new. We've done a lot of promoting. We've moved staff around. Part of the reason that we did decide that we needed new folks in place is because some of these things were not being done, and administratively we knew that we're taking these things seriously, and so we're seeking to address it. None of that really gets to your concerns, Commissioner Kakani. Honestly, I mean, it's unacceptable. We're working through what we can with the team that we have in place, and as I said, we're working closely with our DOJ monitor to try to get as much of this mitigated as soon as we possibly can.
So when you read this report and you see that there's like fail after fail, what is the consequence for the staff who didn't do the report in a timely fashion, or for the supervisor who didn't ensure that all of the other staff who were present, submit their paperwork in a timely fashion? Or is there not a consequence?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to look at those things case by case, obviously, but when folks are violating policy and not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they need to be counseled at first. And if it's a continued behavior, they need to be disciplined. I am not aware. I can't speak to specific cases. I don't know that folks have been disciplined behind any of this at this time. That is certainly something that.
Well, I'm sorry, Chief Patino, but I have to stop you right there because you are aware about the November 30th incident. You were contacted by the executive director. You were directed by Chief Gonzalez to look into the matter. You appeared before this commission and said you didn't know if the incident occurred. In that incident, there was a decision made by somebody as present here today to not report to the board as it not being a major incident because only 6 youth were involved when per the reports and the video, there was a group of youth trying to break into that set and totaled over 10. You're aware of that incident. And if you haven't looked into what investigation is being conducted into it, independent from my office, but within your own office, that's a choice that you've made based on the request that was made by this body through the executive director. That's a personal knowledge. It's not a general lack of information.
Sure, Mr. Huntsman, and I apologize if I, was being misleading there. I am aware of that. We are looking into that incident. It is not my practice to come into public meetings and discuss specific investigations or incidents that are going on. And so, yes, I am aware. Yes, we are investigating.
Thank you.
So I apologize if that was somehow misleading. I was speaking more in general terms about this backlog that's been addressed here. What's not addressed in your report, as far as I'm aware, is a specific incident. So I won't speak to a specific incident. But generally, these are things that we take very seriously. And so if discipline needs to be meted out, then we will do so appropriately.
I just wanted to name that the November 30th incident was documented in the IG's report at the outset.
As was the move from Central Juvenile Hall in order to avoid a BSCC inspection. I don't want you to comment because it's an open pending matter, but I think the answer is what you're describing in terms of accountability within the department is not happening at the management level. It's fine to talk about what staff do or don't do, but they take cue from management. And that 0% compliance is what results in the facts on the ground that we see over and over. When management does not hold itself accountable, when middle management is not held accountable, then that has a direct consequence for line staff.
I mean, that's certainly where I was headed, and not just with the use of force, but even with the OC spray, right? Like there's a protocol. And when you see that like you're not just like failing to implement the overall directive around phasing it out, but even just like the bare minimum of like following a protocol that ensures that young people are treated with care after they are OC sprayed, which is, having a hard time reconciling that in and of itself, that we OC spray someone and then we try to treat them with care. But even that's, being noted as like a fail. It's again, I'm just at a loss for like not just, the lack of accountability for line staff, but also like whatever is being communicated to staff by those who are above them. And it's just unacceptable. That BSCC report and the findings related to that like your colleague came here and lied. We're talking about the lives of young people, and you actively harmed them.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Kakani.
This department actively harmed them.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Kakani. I can't have you say that my colleague came here and lied, because that's not what happened. I'm not going to comment on it any further. We've had a lot of conversation with OIG, but I'm sorry.
We can disagree on what it means to lie. But at the end of the day, your actions, your office's actions, your department's actions, your institution's actions to save face at the expense of like the well-being of young people, it's not okay. It's just not okay.
The pin-pass washer.
Any other comments, questions, commissioners? Okay, seeing none. Thanks everyone for your comments. We're moving on.
Frankie,
Yep.
Sorry, Chair Carrillo, we did have one hand be raised during the discussion. I know you had mentioned wanting to go back to public comment.
Absolutely. Yes, Wendy.
Okay, we've got James Maddox. James, Janae's going to unmute you. And you can begin.
My apologies. Please unmute yourself, James, again.
You hear me now? Hello?
Yes, you can begin, James.
Oh, okay. Draco is back again. Remember, 7th century Athenian lawgiver. I have watched your head language, since I can't see your bodies, as Commissioner Kakani was talking, and all of the commissioners looked very, very concerned. Remember, I offered, and I still think you should continue and maybe reflect on it, that maybe for $1.025 billion, it's time to shut them down, because it might be it sounds draconian, but it looks like that's what's needed. Shut it down. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carrillo. Back to you.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, everyone else. Moving on to item number 7 is a report from the Los Angeles County Probation Oversight Commission on progress of the commission's strategic goals, including publishing of a public-facing data dashboard, outstanding requests for information, and requests for survey participation on POC performance and priorities. Wendy, please proceed.
Thank you, and I'll be very quick. Mostly, I am excited about our public-facing dashboard, and I know that's annoying because it's not ready yet, but it will be ready soon. It's going to provide information on demographics of the camps and halls and OC spray in a very beautiful, usable format, thanks to the team of technicians in the executive office and Dr. Gongara's work, and as well as input from commissioners, including in particular Commissioners Dupuy and Jackson. We will have it available soon. We're aiming for by the end of the first quarter to definitely be able to launch it. We also are working with Probation to be able to share the information that we've developed in creating this dashboard to help with the creation of their dashboard as well. With respect to the survey participation, this is actually something that I discussed with Commissioner Jackson about the idea around re-upping our strategic plan for the 2023 calendar year and making sure that our priorities reflect the needs and interests of the stakeholders that we represent in the community, and staff and people who are incarcerated and on probation, and their families and advocates and all of the folks who participate in our meetings. So we are going to be creating a survey on reflection on our performance, as well as what our initiatives should look like for this calendar year. And we encourage you all to participate. Again, please sign up for our mailing list. But we'll also have a link at the January 26th meeting in the chat if you aren't on our mailing list. And then finally, we have 2 outstanding requests for information that the motions were actually published on the agenda. And if you're interested in more information, I'm happy to answer that.
Thank you, Wendy. Any written or live public comments for this item?
No hands raised. No public comment and no written public comment, right, Janae?
Yes, Wendy, that's correct.
Thank you both. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Vice Chair Jackson?
Yeah, thank you. I would just add, in addition to what Wendy said, is that it was in part my idea to come up with this survey. Part of it, from my perspective, is an accountability tool. It's very important to me as a commissioner that we're also holding ourselves to account and making sure that we're achieving the objectives that have been set out for us. And so we really want to maximize participation and hear from everyone on what it is that we should be prioritizing this quarter and where we're not doing so well, so we can respond directly to those requests and improve our own performance. So thank you.
Thank you. It looks like that's it for now. Oh.
Chair
No,
Carrillo, I would just ask if anyone is interested in entertaining the motion that's available on the agenda about the 2 requests for information.
Was that a thumbs up?
Monique, I see you're being animated about it. I'll let you do it.
Someone, please. Anyone? Commissioner Nong?
Yes, I'm going to. Thank you. I don't know how to say it. I would like to adopt the motion put forth by the POC staff regarding compelling the probation department to produce the information outlined in the written motion that's attached to the agenda.
Seconded by Chair Carrillo. Any discussion? Seeing none. Get a vote, Wendy?
Thank you. We're voting on this motion that is attached to the agenda regarding compelling information. Commissioner Canales,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia Lays,
Aye.
Commissioner Jackson,
Aye.
Commissioner Kakani,
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith,
Aye.
Commissioner Nong,
Aye.
and Chair Carrillo.
Oops. Aye.
So with Commissioner Lewis being absent, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, commissioners. Moving on now to agenda 8. This is for commissioners and PLC staff. Anything you would like to see on future agenda matters? Oh, Don, there you are.
At some time in the next month or two, I'd like to see a report on the status of the reserve program and how they're being deployed.
Staff, do we got
Can you
that?
say a little bit more about that, Commissioner Meredith?
We've had a reserve program for probably 3 decades, and it's gone up and down. And I know they're trying now to get it working to the best of their ability and trying to get them so that they can be a benefit, helping out the halls and also in the field. So I just want to see what the status is on their training and how they're being assigned out, and what duties they're having to do.
Thank you. Chief Patino, I'll check in with you about who we should contact about that.
Sure. Thank you. We'd love to.
And the question is, are there any matters not posted on the agenda to discuss or to place on future meeting agendas for action? It's sort of how we wrap up our meetings. Okay, I think that's it. Any discussion, comments, staff, commissioners? Okay, moving on.
Not on this item, but we do have one hand raised for general public comment.
You got it, Wendy. Thank you.
Okay, and if anyone else would like to make general public comment, and now we've got 2 hands raised, dial *3 on your phone or press the hand raise button. We'll go with the commenter. Your name says Next Level Education. And you are unmuted. You can begin. Can you hear
Hello?
me? Yes.
Yes.
You can begin.
Yes. Hi, I'm Roger Posada from Next Level Education. All I wanted to say is I was previously one of those youth and come from a line of being in this system. And I just wanted to get some more information on, I have a pilot program that I designed to work with the kids in the halls before they get out to help them deal with their aggression and their issues. Because sometimes when you have people coming from the outside coming in, it's a little outlet for them to let out some of that aggression, especially when it's people that have been there. And I'm having a hard time trying to figure out who do I contact. Like, I'm new to all this. I have my business plan and everything laid out, which is different than anything anybody else has. And I'm trying to get in contact with somebody so I can get whatever background checks or whatever I can do to try and implement my program to start talking to the kids in the halls before they get more aggressive, more violent, and make it harder for the probation department, because I totally understand where they're coming from. It's hard when you have a bunch of kids coming together and they're going at it like, your mind spins. And what they need is an outlet, and I know this from experience, and people to talk to them and understand where they're coming from instead of just being supervised, because you start to feel like an animal, and like I said, I know this from experience, and I just want to know who I can contact to show my program and possibly get whatever background checks or whatever I need to complete to be able to come into the halls to speak to these kids, because those outlets help for these kids to be able to vent and open up and see a little bit, so they're just not all aggression. Because when you're caged up, that's natural, it's biological, it's just going to happen. You put a dog in a corner, it's going to bite. So that was it. I just wanted to know some more information on that. How could I take some steps to help you guys as well? Because I know none of us
Thank you, Roger. That's your time. And I'm going to ask Janae to send you my email in the chat, so that please shoot me an email and I'll help get you connected. Next, call-in user 6 is anonymous. So I guess you know who you are. So you know to unmute yourself. Dial *6 to unmute yourself when you get the request.
Yes, good afternoon.
There we go.
Wendy, then Commissioners, this is Mel.
You're
I just had a
anonymous,
quick,
but your voice doesn't allow you to be very anonymous, Mr. Bailey. Okay, can we go back to the 2 minutes?
yeah, no, that's just the
Jennifer,
phone that
can
I'm
you
using.
reset the time? There we go. You can begin.
Okay, sorry about it's just the phone that I'm using. Good afternoon. Just real quick, as it relates to, well, actually, in keeping with the spirit of the motion that was passed earlier, and also with the identification of rehabilitation and I guess dual accountability, I still ask as to the involvement of the courts. I ask for involvement of the courts. In these discussions, it appears necessary. I would reasonably conclude that the courts are a part of the rehabilitative process. And if that's disagreed, I understand, but I think that's probably another conversation because I think they are, and that's a different conversation for that entity. Keeping in mind that the young people are supervised by, they're under the supervision of the probation department while they still remain under the jurisdiction of the courts. And, probation enforces the conditions of the courts. And enforcing is not an ugly word. I think we all do it at home with ourselves and our biological children, at least hopefully. And so I just wanted to, again, I know you're probably tired of me saying it, but I do think the courts are a very important part of this conversation. And it would be in keeping with the essence of the rehabilitative tools and resources that we have discussed today. And that's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Thomas Bell. Thomas, we're going to unmute you.
Hi,
Go
can
ahead.
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say I felt a little upset during this meeting. I feel like this meeting was kind of very biased, especially towards the probation officers. Every once in a while, you'll throw us a little here, say there, and say, oh, there's good officers, but overall, it's been like this meeting was a lot of abuse towards us, and when we ask for consequences, we ask for accountability, we get shut down. But yet I hear another thing of, oh, who's holding the line staff accountable? Who's doing this? So accountability only goes one way. You guys are the probation commission, and I thought that the probation commission meant that you handle all aspects of probation. Judge with us as well, the officers as well, and adults as well. That you guys look out for all of probation, try to fix all of probation, not just one aspect of it. I understand you guys enjoy the youth and want them to do great, but we want to do great with them as well, and we need support from you guys as well. And we need to hear more positive, and we need to hear our voices heard as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Megan Stanton Trehan. Megan, we're going to unmute you. Okay, you can begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So I'm Megan Stanton Trehan, the director of the Youth Justice Education Clinic at Loyola Law School. And I just wanted to take a minute after everything that's been discussed today to really kind of highlight some things that we've been hearing. I don't know if folks had a chance to see what happened at the Laco School Board meeting this week, but there were teachers and parents there talking about how the kids that are incarcerated at Central in particular, but also at Barry J, are really not getting access to what they consider equitable special education services. And there's a serious lack of transparency as well for the students in terms of whether they're even going to school in the actual school buildings. So I've also heard from staff at other facilities that students are being educated on the units frequently, and that's not really what an education should be when a student is incarcerated. So I just really wanted to raise that issue, as with all the other things that are being discussed today, students should not be leaving the facilities worse off in terms of their education than when they arrive. And that's a serious concern. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Next up, we have Kent Mendoza. Kent, you'll have 2 minutes as soon as we unmute you. Okay, you're good to go.
everybody. My name is Kent Mendoza. I'm with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and I just, I've been hearing all the conversation, and I just want to first, thank all of you POC commissioners for your hard work on just, asking the right questions and just, doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is, oversight over this department. And I think the thing I just wanted to share, um, I'm just concerned of like the programming that is not being given to all these young people. As someone that's been in all of these facilities, Central Juvenile Hall, Barry J. Idol, I recall one time when I used to be an M&M after leaving the compound, where I was so in a dark place in my life that people didn't understand. I was in my mind that I was in the dark place in my life, right? And I remember getting contraband in. I remember having MP3s and weed, and the staff, catching me with all of this stuff. And it's just, I think that I don't promote none of that stuff, but it's true what people say. When you're in this place, when there's no programming, when there's nothing to do, it pushes kids in a more darker place than they already are. So to me, it's just I'm just concerned of the programming that the kids are not receiving. I think that we need to really, I don't know, probation. I really hope that you're doing everything you can to really try to figure out how to serve these young people, because it seems like the same thing that was happening when I was incarcerated in these systems in 2009, 2010, 2011. It's literally the same things happening now. It just happens to be a different year, and it just happens to be a different branch of young people that is not being treated and given the proper services they need. So I just really want to urge the probation oversight commissions to continue to do your job, to continue to push for all of these things to be executed and done, because these young people really deserve programming. They need to work on their behavior, their rehabilitations now, and that means that we need to provide them with the resources they need, maybe more credible messengers, more people to really change the culture that is currently in the system. It's bad culture. So yes, that's all. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Kent. And our final commenter will be Yasmin Imani McMorrin. And you can begin.
To all the commissioners, staff, and community that's on the call. My name is Yasmin Amani McMorrin. I have many roles. I'm the vice mayor of Culver City, but I'm commenting in my capacity as director of education equity at Children's Defense Fund California. I'm also within CDF as a member of the Education Justice Coalition, which occasionally provides comments to this body. But I just want to elevate, deeply care about the opportunity for the youth that are in our camps and halls to have access to quality education, and then there'll be more to come on that. But I just want to appreciate the bravery of our commissioners in this body who are serving in the role of oversight, and are willing to ask the critical questions, and advocate from a place of centering the needs of children, really asking the hard questions about how are we making sure our children are well, that they are cared for, and how can we shape a system around our children truly having the opportunity to thrive. And I think that is something that hopefully we're all sitting with, because we design these systems, people create these systems, and so they can be different. We can make and design systems that do meet our children's needs so that they can leave these spaces, hopefully never have to enter these spaces, but when they leave these spaces to be whole, and be able to do, whatever they want. So great things, and they should have that just like, all the rest of us have the opportunity to do. So I just want to commend y'all for your service. I know a lot of this is thankless, but please continue to be voices and think about those children who oftentimes cannot be here to advocate on behalf of themselves. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you very much. And we have one more, Krista Newbold, and then I think we can end the public comment at that point. Chair Carrillo. Go ahead, Krista.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for calling me at the last minute. I wasn't going to say anything, but obviously I couldn't help myself. One of the commissioners, Commissioner Kakani, she made a comment about the prefrontal cortex developing, and that they're still kids, and when it came to the topic of accountability. And this is actually not my comment, but I'm going to state it because someone else stated it, and It's basically you can commit a crime when your cortex is developing, but not be accountable by it. When you talk about accountability, kids should be held accountable because that's how they learn to be accountable as adults. And the conversation really should be how we're holding them accountable, not if we're going to hold them accountable. There's a lot of accusations going on here. And the thing is, if hearsay is not admissible in a court of law, why is it God's gospel truth in a POC meeting? There is a lot of things being flown around that's not factual. It's just things that people have said, and you're running with it as gospel truth without investigation. Such as, Frankie, and I'm sorry to say, you making the comment that you think the staff are high too. That was highly inflammatory and actually quite disrespectful. You guys have a level of professionalism that should be kept. And any of those conversations that get a little more aggressive should be behind closed doors, in my opinion. I hope that we can get better with it because we're all on a collaborative way of trying to fix whatever issues that there is to make it better for everyone, staff and kids alike. There are good staff. Please do not question that. There are good staff in juvenile, in adult, in the field, in admin, and we have good leaders. Please know that. And please take that in consideration when you're making your statements. Thank you.
That's the end of public comment, Chair Carrillo.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you everyone else for your comments. As a quick reminder, be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel at LA County POC. To receive reminders about our upcoming meetings, visit our website at poc.lacounty.gov. To subscribe to our email listing. It is now 3:24 p.m. and I joined this meeting. Thank you, everyone.